Good evening, everyone. I would like to call district school committee meeting. It is 6:05. We will do roll call in alphabetical order. Bill Bontempi.
Here.
Cheryl Clairwana. Here. Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Patrick Kiernan.
Here.
Lisa Murray. Here. Maura Ryan. Here. Michelle Boudreau. Aye. Here. If you would please stand, Bill will be leading us in the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So let us bow our heads in ceremonial silence and remembrance of those 13 service members who gave their lives in the capital attack. Thank you.
So good evening. Before we, through the chair, before we go into executive session, which I know is the next order of business, I'm going to ask once again, if you're in a school in the Hampden-Wilbraham Regional School District, from the school committee to the Department of Education and myself as a superintendent of schools, you need to wear masks for the protection of our students, for the protection of each other, and for the protection of yourself. So if you do not have a mask on, please put a mask on. If you don't have a mask available, we have masks for you as well. But you need to be wearing a mask in our school setting, please.
If they decide not to wear a mask, then what happens?
You're supposed to be wearing a mask in our schools. It's what we require for all of our adults and all of our children in the schools. I'm going to ask you one more time if you would please wear a mask. Put a mask on for those who do not have one on. Masks are available. So the mandate from the Department of Education and from the school committee is that everyone in the Hampden-Wilbraham Regional School District schools that enter in this building, whether you're an adult or a children, you need to wear a mask. So please, I'm going to ask one last time, if you please put a mask on for those adults, for the protection of yourself, for the protection of each other, and for the protection of our students.
That's the official policy.
Yes, it is, please. Thank you. I appreciate the respect. So through the chair, as far as I'm concerned, this is a disruption of our school. We're mandating masks in our buildings. This is your school committee meeting, but I feel like everyone in this building have asked for our teachers, for our staff, our students, visitors, UPS, anyone that comes in this building wears a mask.
Do we have some masks? Do you not have masks? Can we give these people some masks?
Sure.
Did you have anything that says that you're exempt?
Can't ask that.
I can't ask that.
It's a heavy violation. You can't ask somebody about their exemption.
All right, forgive me. Sorry about that.
We have a need for executive session.
Make a motion to go into executive session.
Executive session pursuant to Mass General Law C30A, Section 21A, 7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law, specifically Mass General Law C214, Section 1B, Massachusetts Student Record Law, Mass General Law C71, Section 34D, Massachusetts Student Records Regulations, 603 CMR 23 et sequentia, and Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, 20 USC Section 1232G and 34 CFR Part 99, regarding student transfer requests in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law C, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. Roll call vote in alphabetical order. Bill?
Yes.
Cheryl? Aye. Sean?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Maura?
Aye.
Michelle? Aye. We will return in about 30 minutes.
Our book or?
We have the executive session for the fire. We're gonna be going right in that area.
You can talk.
Something, yeah, it's legal, something.
Well, they do, yeah, I think, I was, that was in the past, I was waiting. That's their name, that's what they do, they have an executive session. That didn't last long.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, that's it, yeah. Well, that's what the select. And then the housing. And plus, so that at any moment they could pop out and say. Yeah.
Yes.
And then they go. Yeah.
So, so,
They were saying 80, just for the equity, just for the audit, then let's take all break it all out, then we're gonna find all that stuff out. We'll give these people that were like one of the gentlemen was saying here a couple of months ago. What makes them certified? Is there such a thing?
Is there
Nobody
such a
heard of
thing?
this.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a degree in this?
Yeah. No, it's like- Yes, there you go.
This is not my idea, the book, whiteness. This is what
Enlighten us.
eighth and ninth grade kids. Whiteness is a big, it's a, well, no, the schools that have done equity laws, this is recommended.
Yeah.
That-
This is how they continue to tell you that you're not.
Yeah, we know.
So
You're
they're
white
not,
forever.
so they're not boys and girls, boys and girls. Whiteness is always done.
Yeah.
So that makes all of us bad.
Yeah, what makes kids feel bad?
Right. So this is really just. But they're gonna do this. Well, yeah, but they're also gonna try to change the dynamics of the town.
They want Equus.
Well, they are. No, they're sending them to our. Swing state.
Oh, yeah.
And they're also. Last night, and there's supposed to be translators, but.
They can't. They translate it to Russian.
Yeah.
I just think it is already, that's definitely part of it.
So it's. Eight, seven, and eight.
No, I don't know.
Three pages from the back. Three pages from the back. There's the American flag, 3 pages from the back.
And I have a student that has.
This is a good one.
It's changing all the pronouns to gender pronouns. So instead of saying it's focus on a table, it's focus on a table. Because, yeah, it's a boy or a girl. It's all. Even like kindergarten. Yeah. My boy, right, girl. Can't say mom. Like,
System.
It's interesting night, Sarah.
Sorry?
Interesting night.
It's always an interesting night. It's always an interesting night. What was that?
Oh, it's horrible. I didn't get the. Okay. Okay.
That's what I'm saying, that's why I'm telling you, because it's great. The mass and I was going to wear, that's not.
Yeah. I got a feeling it might be. Got my stories out here.
And it's all part of.
Third page from the back, you said the very back about the American flag, third page from the back.
Yes, right there.
That one.
Yep. Read the bottom. Go there first.
I'm always holding on. I've been holding off on glasses for so long.
I didn't know this was in our library yet, but the actually also put down maybe everyone in the past on Meadow Trail, Shrewsbury. When you go to school, that's what
Yeah, but is the equity audit recommended too?
Yes. Well, when they take the info, right, it's
Well, right, but as they were saying, for the week, though, it's what the school district chooses to take of it, right? Because they
So these are record resources, then school district says, I feel the commission of all the resources available.
They're watching it.
But that's.
Or they can choose not to.
Find this book. Appropriately.
I think it's written at that age level to work on the content to be appropriate. I mean, that was.
Wait, this is. Well, it's accepted.
Yeah, when the public. It does.
American flag.
No, I did see that.
So
It's all right. I personally don't have a problem with it. Ideas. Don't hurt anyone. I was very patient. Let's put it that way. I read a lot of things that people thought were way over my head. Robert Rules of Order, yeah.
Taking back my vote, and I want us to vote now to have, vote next week to have it ready up. So.
So that's it.
That's on the agenda. It says equity vote on the agenda. So they should be deciding on it tonight. It's leaving the agenda too.
Public comments from the profit, so I think a couple hours.
Probably why they started it at 6 instead. No one to be very tense. I got locked out of my car. I had plenty of time to stop, so I locked myself out of my car. And then amazing day for the 35 minutes to jump off on a and I raced here, while my tailpipe was on fire. But then they ended up starting a little late because of technical issues. So it was okay. My friends like, did you get that? We started a little late. I'm so grateful that you came out. Oh. He's a wonderful. No.
Yeah, good to see you.
I already have anything.
I'm good at this. You guys changed the, no, I have to. Did you? Change the, it's nice and clear right now.
These speakers we usually use that in the past last year, and they moved them out here, so that's probably why it's good.
Oh, whatever it is, keep it just that way.
Is it just coming out of here, or is it also coming out of there?
I'm not sure.
That's 1, 2.
Is it coming out of the speakers up there?
Aaron's not here, but he's the one who set it up.
Don't ask the deaf person what you need. Because I won't be able to tell you.
Isn't that thing that we're supposed to leave them on because of when they're recorded, they're not recording? Yeah. Yes, this meeting.
Yeah, it just is that the Zoom, the owl is what the people in the public out in Zoom world are seeing.
Aaron, are these speakers going to just these two, or is it going to the overhead as well?
Or what?
Are these microphones?
Just the speakers. I don't believe it goes to the overhead.
Now 6:28, we return from executive session. We'll now resume our regular scheduled meeting.
So, Madam Chair, I'm gonna report this meeting, just wanted to let you know. Can I put it up
You're
here?
supposed to ask at the beginning of a meeting if anyone else is recording, so he's recording.
Thank you.
Is anyone else recording? Did everyone hear that? Is anyone else recording? Thank you.
Everybody all set? Great, so two things, so good evening, and Erin Dowding is now here as my new administrative assistant. She'll be replacing Kate Belsky, and I'll talk a little bit more about Kate later on, and her retirement party celebration is coming up as well too. Also want to be for the audience in school committee, Mary Timoretta is joining us as well too. She is taking minute notes for us as well too. So we'll be expediting the process of our minutes for our meeting as well too. So through the chair, before we have Kara Fry give us a quick health update tonight, I asked that you grant me permission to show you a short video that was used in many of our schools this past week during our faculty meetings. It's a really great video. It's a really feel-good video, and it has a lot to do with us returning back to school. All set, Erin?
I was told when I was an English teacher, quiet classroom. The teacher doesn't talk, students listen. Then we had a cat. This all went deep
No, we're not doing
Can we start from the beginning, please?
that. No, you can't do that.
Walking by another classroom, there's so much noise coming from the cracks in the I was told when I was a new teacher, quiet classroom. Oh, good. The teacher doesn't help students listen. Then we had a long, deep roads. The sound of excited children laughing at jokes that you can't hear with their muted kids gasping in wonder and experiment. The instant increase in volume. Class discussion, laughter, poetry, walking by another classroom, hearing so much is coming from the cracks in the door that you can't. Teacher might have some engaged students. This year has been the noise drove us like crazy. There's something empty classroom that doesn't feel. With the sound of couple voices behind masks that doesn't seem to have the same effect. In this past year, we've done what was necessary and some magic still happening. But this time has taken its toll. Perhaps you miss the noise. Because the noise often means that kids are loving learning. They feel comfortable enough to let down their guards and express their emotions. The noise can work as an affirmation as a teacher. Class that your students love, and they love it enough to make noise. Quiet classroom is a good classroom. Maybe sometimes. Sometimes we need you, your students, need water. But also learn that there's nothing wrong with laughing out loud, keep discussions, giving collaboration, build relationships. Sound of joy, frustration, energy. Your curiosity, hands raised and calling to be called on. So as we begin to which along with so many other challenges, is here in life steps. Let's not forget the things that we miss most. As one of those for you is the sound of the word. The sound of a class of names, spoken for poetry, desks scraping across the floor, or the music of love to play or that one kid who loves to be listening last night, or Friday nights under the lights, or the sound of pencil scrawling on paper, that feeling at the end of the day, that bird silence. Let's not forget this. Let's embrace it.
So just, it was a great video. A lot of our schools showed that video this week. Everything good? Okay, so it's a great video. I'll talk a little bit more about the return of school and having our kids in the school classrooms and the hallways and how great this first week has been so far. But I just want to share that video with because it resonated with a lot of our teachers that were showed this week during the professional line. Okay, great. So next, I'm going to ask Kiara Fry to join us. Kiara, as you guys are well aware, is our district nurse leader. She'll give us a brief update regarding some health data regarding COVID and our vaccinations. Kiara, why don't you come right up here? You can join us right here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to share some current local data. The town of Wilbraham has had 130 positive COVID-19 cases. That's since August 1st. The town of Hamden has had a total of 40 positive COVID-19 cases since August 1st. The town of Hamden and Wilbraham, we currently have, as of today, 11 positive cases, in addition to 12 staff or students currently in quarantine. The Hamden County data, I'll just go over that briefly, is gradually increasing in the school-age children. In the 0 to 4-year-olds, this is in all of Hamden County, we have 927 cases. In the 5 to 9-year-olds, we have 1,198 cases. In the 10 to 14-year-olds, we have 1,103 cases. And in the 15 to 19-year-olds, we have 1,225 cases of positive COVID infection. I'm going to briefly go over the percentages. We have some new staff and students, so this will be updated as we go along. In grade 9 at Minnetonka Regional High School, we have over 50% of our student population vaccinated, fully vaccinated. In grade 10, we have 55% of our grade 10 students fully vaccinated. In grade 11, we have 52% of our students fully vaccinated. And in grade 12, that is 55% of students who are fully vaccinated. At Wilbraham Middle School in grade 6, it's almost 7%. As you know, 6th graders have not turned 12 yet and cannot get the vaccine. Grade 7, we have 37% of students who are fully vaccinated, and this is in Wilbraham Middle School. Grade 8, we have 44%. At Green Meadows, who has a smaller number of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, we have 13% in grade 6, 10% in grade 7, and almost 18% in grade 8. Just a quick overview, Hamden Wilbraham School District has submitted an application for the Test and Stay program. This program allows students who are identified as close contacts within the school setting to return to class as long as they are asymptomatic, test negative via the Abbott Binance Now lab test. This test would be given in the school setting only with parental consent. The CIC Health Company based out of Cambridge is working hard to get all the necessary supports in place to support district schools in their testing efforts. In rare cases, the services may be delayed to the start of the school year. All schools that have requested these services will receive them in the coming weeks. If a school does not wish to begin testing until all on-site support services are in place, they may use the intervening time to gather consents for the testing program. Anything more that, no, we have I recently spoke with Sandra Balbino at CVS. She's the pharmacist there. We will be providing staff members with flu vaccine, so that information will be coming shortly. As soon as the vaccine is available for students under 12, I will put a link on our district website so you can easily find out information on where you can get vaccines. We are lucky in this area to have the Eastville Mall testing site. Their turnaround time has been fantastic. So if somebody tests positive and is not feeling well, you can drive right up to Eastville Mall and get a test back probably within about 24 hours. I know I'm forgetting something, so if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer it.
Any questions for Kiara? So just to reiterate, just a couple of things, right? Our goal is to keep students in school, right? That's the number one thing. We want to keep our staff and students healthy. We want to keep them in school. We're going to keep practicing all the mitigating strategies by continuing to require that our students and staff wear masks in the school to keep everyone safe, by hand sanitizing, doing the best we can to keep our students 3 feet distancing at all time as well. The other part is what Kiara just referred to as a test and stay. So if a student is positive and the students around them, and I'm waiting, y'all waiting here, but the students around them are designated as being a close contact and needing to possibly have to quarantine, instead, we're gonna be testing them on a daily basis
for up to 5 to 7 days with parental consent.
while they're remaining in school. And if they are continuing to have no symptoms and
Right.
continue to test negative, we can keep them in school until they're having to quarantine the students. Our goal by doing all these mitigating strategies, including wearing masks, is to keep our students in school and keep our staff safe.
Now, the quarantine status, does that include vaccinated and unvaccinated students? Is it the, are we treating
Oh,
those
so yeah,
students-
thank you for that question.
Are we,
So
are we treating those student
um,
populations the same?
Yeah, those who are fully vaccinated are not required to quarantine. We do request that they monitor themselves for symptoms for up to 14 days. And if they develop even mild symptoms, we respectfully ask them to get tested.
What about the students that are unvaccinated?
Yeah, students who are unvaccinated have to follow the normal quarantine process. So basically, are you talking about household contacts or are you talking about just?
No, I'm talking about school contact. So school contact, this was a question from a
Oh, yeah.
constituent. So you have a close contact in school.
Right, as
Yeah.
of today, they have to follow the normal quarantine process. So if we have a student in school who is identified as a close contact, they are required to go for testing 5 days after last exposure. The earliest time they could return to school is on day 8, which is why we applied for the test and stay program.
So the test and stay would allow them to test every day.
Yes,
They would be able to
in
stay
school.
And remain in school.
That's
So
correct.
that protocol does not change whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated. So vaccinated and unvaccinated students will both.
Well, if they're vaccinated, they don't have to test at all unless they have symptoms.
Okay, so it's only the kids that are
Only
unvaccinated.
the kids who are unvaccinated, so.
They're allowed to test and stay.
That's correct.
Yeah, what testing are you doing for the unvaccinated kids that would be quarantined? Are you doing the pool test? Are you doing a swab?
No, I mean, I have to be honest with you, we have testing everywhere in our area. I mean,
Oh, so you're just sending them out?
we're sending them for testing. I do have to say thank you to our families. Our nurses have been, we have been calling families for the past 3 weeks. We've had 100% of our parents answer our phone calls. We've had 100% of our parents agree to testing. So I thank the school community for that and all of our nurses too.
That's great.
And so just the other piece of it is, you saw, we're gonna continue those Wednesday communications that go out. I'm sure school committee got them as well as the community gets them, that the number of students or staff that are testing positive due to school related, right? So that's why you saw this week it was a 0, because none of the ones that she's referring to that tested positive were directly related to school. So that's why that number was 0 this week.
So Al, as you know, the Department of Education had their FAQs.
Yep.
And mentioned that schools could potentially have the option of offering remote.
Yep.
For those that have to quarantine.
Yep.
What are we doing for that?
So we're gonna talk a little bit about that when it goes through my section, if that's okay. My superintendent's report, I have a piece that I'll talk to you about on that. If that's okay, I sort of want to keep with Tiara, and then I'll answer that through mine. Okay, great.
Carrie, similar for, it's kind of a 2-part question, similar for busing, close contact on the bus.
Right.
So vaccinated, and unvaccinated, is it the same?
So
is it the
that
same
is a
protocol?
change from last year. As long, the federal law is requiring that all students on buses wear masks. As long as the buses have the windows open and students are fully masked, they are not required to, we are not required to contact trace those students.
Okay, and that, so it doesn't matter vaccinated, unvaccinated.
That's correct.
But it does matter if they're not wearing a mask. You said if they're.
Yeah, I have to tell you that, I'm aware of 3 that have medical exemptions. Everyone else should be wearing masks in the bus. I only have 3 students who, maybe have a tracheostomy, whatever it is. We have 3 students that have medical exemptions.
And so we met with the bus company earlier, we met with Lower Pioneer Valley, so they have masks on the bus as well too, so when students are getting on the bus, if they don't have a mask, we're providing them one.
What happens if a student refuses to wear a mask?
We have not had that happen in our entire district, so
Are we ready for that if something like that does happen?
we are, in terms of how we'll handle that, yes. Any other health-related questions for Karen, her report in terms of either vaccinations or our data regarding COVID? The nurses are off the ground hitting already the work they're doing. Even before school started, getting those positive cases that were coming in that, again, weren't school-related, but we were doing the contact tracing and getting that information out to families and to those that were close contact with them. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Moving on to new business, we had discussed scheduling an MASC training with our field rep, Tracy Novik, and also kind of pairing that with having the school attorney Sweeney, for some training, kind of a workshop model. We'd like to have them come together, and for the MASC training, we're just looking for, roles of the school committee, just sort of a refresher, to go over the roles of the committee, discussing like open meeting law, and some dates, the proposed dates that we have, just for, to discuss. September 22nd, the 28th, or the 23rd.
So I'm gonna be difficult here, and I'll apologize up front for it. This is the third time that they've come to do the training. As a committee, we repeatedly refuse to stay in our lane. So what's gonna change with them coming a fourth time if we continuously overstep our role? It just seems like sit through the same training, yet we don't do anything different.
I don't necessarily agree with that assessment. I don't think that we're venturing that far out of our lanes. I think we're doing school committee business and representing the community.
I would side with Patrick. I think we range so far out of our lane, that sometimes it's hard to differentiate whether we're a school committee or an administrative body. We continue to foist our ideas onto administration. If everybody remembers back to their MASC training, the MASC training clearly states the school committee is the what and the administration is the how. We decide district-wide policy. It is the administrative team to decide how to implement that policy. I think we spend way too much time telling the superintendent how to do his job. That being said, I don't know if we can, if we can push off. I mean, we have to continue to strive to get better. And so if another training session is what we think might be in order, then I would support it. Unfortunately, I have to just look at my calendar here. I am away two of those days. You said the 28th or the 29th? The 28th I could do, with the 22nd, 29th I'm out of town.
And I believe these can be remote sessions as well. Anybody else have any?
I can't do any.
Wednesdays are tough for me, but I can, especially if it's remote, I can make it work.
So I think the intent was probably not to have it part of our school committee meetings, because then they become longer. So we're looking for days that weren't school committee dates. So I think that's what we're shooting for like a Wednesday.
It's easier for me if it is part of the school committee meeting, because I schedule myself out that way. So if we could do it as a workshop, maybe in an October school committee meeting, that would be easier for one person.
Okay, I can come back with some dates. So we move on to subcommittee updates. So we'll start with the curriculum subcommittee. Cheryl.
So we met our curriculum subcommittee, and the first thing we did was elect the subcommittee chair. So I did the subcommittee chair. We looked and reviewed our subcommittee goals and action steps for 2020, 2021, and discussed some of the goals that did not get accomplished during that time. Quite a few of our goals did get accomplished, but two of the things that didn't get accomplished yet was one that was particularly, particularly,
Cheryl, can you turn
Yeah.
the microphone? Okay,
I keep pushing it.
there you go.
Thank you, Sean, thank you.
Yeah.
The one that I think that really jumped at us, out at us, was the dashboard. We've been talking about having a dashboard. In deference to what Bill and Patrick were saying, the school committee, I think, has been saying a dashboard for a few years now. And we would like administration to get a dashboard that gives us the data that we're seeking for like an equity audit, like MCAS data, like our program of studies and how that's going. So we'd like, that's what we've been asking for, I'd say at least 2 years, is to have a dashboard on our website that is updated with current data.
Do we have a webmaster?
Particularly data regarding learning.
So is that, I'm sorry, so I know you're looking for a data source, right? And rightfully so, and I think Warren and I have talked, we're looking for some examples from other districts that are using it. But I guess we're a little confused on the data in terms of program of studies, equity and all that. That seems new to me, Cheryl. So I know we were talking before about a data, sort of like a data warehouse, but those other are new to me.
Well, I think a strategic plan, amasses data, and equity audit, amasses data. The fast data at the elementary school gives us data. We are data rich, but we don't present the data in a way parents can access it and make any kind of determinations of how their kids are doing and what they're doing. So I think Patrick's right. That's very much the what of to do. It's not a goal. It was presented with the goals discussion, but I think it's something that all of us have been talking about for quite some time. And it would be behoove us to dig in and do it. The goal that we did put forward as a goal for the committee itself, in working with our director of curriculum, is to have a program of studies for the elementary level. We have a great one for the high school, middle school, the 2 middle schools did a great one this last year. And we'd like to bring that down to elementary level so that a child that goes into kindergarten and leaves the 12th grade, the parents know exactly what the curriculum is each level. And that would be our goal in working with Lisa and her group. The other thing we did is look at a year-long calendar for meetings, and we decided that we would be meeting once, at least at the start, once a month, and we will do the Wednesday before the first Thursday school committee meeting. That's it.
So now the question that I would have is, we talk about the what and the how. And I think what I heard Cheryl say, and we have had discussions about this, is how do we harness the data that we have, and how do we put it into a digestible and readable form? I would offer that, parents may be looking for different things, especially at different levels. And so that may very well be an arm for the strategic plan to really delve deep into that and to get some input from the people out there to say, hey, this is what I'm interested in. Because, we can look at fast data. Fast data, every acronym that you have means nothing to me. I'm not an educator. So to be able to put that data into a digestible report or digestible form, to have a dashboard, I hate to blind people with numbers, but I think being able to put that on the administration as part of the strategic plan to say, what we need you to do is give the families a way to measure how their students are doing, whether to give them an idea of how their students are doing through not just the report cards, but also through any of the data that we have. And also to be able to measure our student achievement year over year and class over class. So that's the what, and then the how is up to you. And that's where the strategic planning comes in. And that's what I would push to you guys is to say, look, let's find out what parents want. Let's find out what families want. And then let's go after it. Because I mean, you know, I know what I'm looking for my kids' education, but there's 3,000 kids in this district. So I think we need to open it up a little bit and find out what people want.
Al, didn't we also talk about at one time that it would be nice to, you know, we're all about student achievement, but how do we measure that student achievement year over year over year? And I was at one time, we were talking about or spitballing an idea where we would take, say, the basket, right? And take a percentage of that score plus a percentage of this score and just work some kind of formula. So this is our score for this year. And then we can go back in time and we can see, are we improving? Are we not improving based on how we decide to call that into question? Because a lot of times we're trying to make things better for the students and we work with the parents and the communities and the teachers and the administration to make that happen. But you know, is it working? I would really like to see some score or some metric that would help us decide that. And is that what you guys are getting to in the
That's
end?
what it
Or-
started off with when I asked when I first got on the committee, because actually Julie O'Keefe started. I remember sitting at TWB and she had a dashboard, they were starting. But then I don't ever know what, like, it didn't follow through, it never came to fruition, but it got started. So I don't know where that stands. She and John DeRosa were working on something, and I don't know what ended up happening to it.
So a couple things, and yes, it's something we're gonna work on. I gotta just let you know, we're really data rich. So anyone that's sitting here as a parent and has a student in the Hampton Wilbraham, whether you're sitting at a parent conference or engaging in a conversation or a talk, all we talk about is looking at that individual data and looking at our students and seeing where they're going, whether it be that individualized data. I think what you're looking for, Mara, and rightly so, we're looking for an example, and Mara and I have talked about it numerous times, is trying to get something like, what can we look at district-wide as opposed to the individual students and those individual data that we're looking at with those parents and students? Like, what does that look like? And I'm just trying to get an example of that so we could decide what data we want to share as a district and what important. We don't overload our parents in terms of looking at this data dashboard, right? If you look at the Department of Education website, they have a beautiful one, Hampton Wilbraham, you can pull up per grade, how they're doing on the MCAS, what the attendance is, all that information. There's a lot there. It's overwhelming. So yes, I look forward to Lisa and myself working with curriculum subcommittee, and looking at displaying that data in a way, and what exact data we're looking for as well. But
That's it.
Lisa?
Okay, so I had my first collaborative meeting. And we approved funding for bistro roof repairs and the Twin Elementary renovation project at the collaborative. And we approved funding for video monitoring systems of the bus garages because everybody keeps stealing things from the buses. So they're putting in a security system. And that's it.
excellent. Thank you.
Do they have any asks for us?
No.
Just check. Thank you.
It's not that easy.
Yep. Listen, it's gonna get.
For our first one, pretty good, okay.
Let's move on to consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
I
Aye.
I went out of order. See? Michelle, aye. There you
You
go.
don't have to
Red
go
lines.
out
Pretty random too. You're tightening them up.
We're talking that we just go usually alphabetical order and it puts a lot of pressure on Bill, have to answer every time. So we thought we'd mix it up a little bit, but Bill's like, I don't care.
Okay, so move on to Aaron, Director of Finance.
Alrighty, you should have, there it is. You should have three reports for me, and I'll start with the first. The first is the monthly financial report, which usually gets a first meeting of every month. This is the first report of the 2022 school year. Nothing huge to share with the exception of if you go down to the middle of the first page, you will notice that our long-term substitutes line is fairly high.
Oh, just one second, I'm sorry. Aaron, are you able to flip that so that they can actually see it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
They can't see it either way, and the numbers are huge.
Should be able to do it directly in the PDF opener. Or
If you want to.
That works.
Probably.
Sorry.
Good, keep going, Aaron, will you?
Okay, so right in the middle, you will notice that we have $144,529. This is line 2324 of encumbered funds in long-term substitutes. We have had a bit of, I guess what I jokingly refer to as a COVID baby boom. We have a large number of maternity leaves starting during the course of this year. We are excited for all of the children coming into the world with us, but that does represent some cost challenges. So we have been working with a number of long-term subs. We're bringing in a number of them. I do have funds on ESSER grants to help offset some of this. So we're going to kind of see where things go. And if we have to sweep some money off onto some of those ESSER grants, we can do that. This is a line we typically, when we budget one bigger line for substitutes in general, because we don't know where everything's going to drop. So it's really our total budget, even though there's not a budgeted amount, it's part of that $329,000 below. So for all intents and purposes, I think you saw this happen last year as well, that subs just went all over the place last year. So similarly, we're hoping to not have so many substitutes this year, but we definitely will have these long-term subs for this purpose. What is inherently a good purpose, but there's some costs associated. Other than that, no real tremendous variances. There is one position you'll see at the bottom of the first page that actually belongs on one of the ESSER grants. It's a position we added to do testing and to help work with social emotional needs of students coming back. So that's there. Other than that, things are pretty normal. There's some employee separation costs that happen over the summer. That's another really hard one to budget for. We don't budget for it typically. We could at some point, but it's usually something we find through savings in other areas. It's usually not tremendous in the big scheme of things. So there's a few other small items, but a lot of the items that are very much fully encumbered. And I will, you're welcome to laugh at me, line 2720, you can see my notes there.
Yeah.
For some reason, we budgeted $250 in this line. I have no idea what we budgeted $250 for. I have no idea where that came from. It ties out with the whole budget. It belongs somewhere, to be honest. I wish I had an answer for it. So I can just laugh at myself a little bit there. The next item, anyone have any questions on that? Hearing silence, we will move on. The next item is a memo on grant funding. Typically, we receive a number of entitlement grants every year, and those are typically mostly rolled into our budget as a whole. So things like our Title I grant, our Title II grant, our Title IV grant, our special education grant. Those are integral parts of the budget that you approve every year. We have a number of positions that are offset. However, with the number of American Recovery Program Act grants that are available this year, I wanted to sort of give you a report of what those grants were. I've been kind of working feverishly for the past few weeks to get all of these grants submitted. so that we can start the year with all of these grants fully submitted and available to draw upon. I have a few questions that came back from Desi about our Title I grant and about our ESSER grant. But they're submitted, so the line in the sand date has been met, and all of those questions are very easily answerable. So it's very typical to have a few questions on some of the grants when you submit them, come back from Desi. So I have no worries that all of this money will come forward. You can see a little bit of narrative about how we approached the grants and how we approached some community participation. And that's really about it. If anyone has questions on that, I'm happy to answer that as well. Again, sensing silence. I will move on to the last meeting. We shared the results of our audit. I also shared with you that our auditor provided us something called a management letter. And that's typically not something we would share with the school committee, or that many districts don't share with the school committee. I believe in transparency. I believe in letting everyone know what's going on. Typically, a management letter is just some areas of improvement provided by the auditor. So these are a number of areas of improvement that our auditor provided us with. And you will see that I've provided a follow-up to each one of those so that we have an actual action plan. So each one of those items will be addressed in turn. Or you will see some sort of comment. So in particular, you will see for the top of page 2, top of page 3 regarding warrants payable. There's not a lot to do about this one. This is the typical, I've not seen a management letter from an auditor that doesn't include this. We are frequently buying things at the end of the year. So as many school districts do, we're trying to prepare for the worst. So if something comes up in the spring or anytime during the year, we want to make sure that we're not spending all of our money before we have something come up. So very typically, there's an end of year sort of spending spree that happens in many government entities, schools as well. So in many cases, those items aren't delivered and we don't get invoices until well into July. So every year the auditor says you really shouldn't do that. and our response is, okay, we'll try to do better. And we really do try to do better, but it's really hard when you're trying to preserve a budget for things that might happen. So for example, we can be hit very hard by very cold weather in the spring, right? So that brings up our heating costs tremendously. With that cold weather may come a lot of snow, so we have to plow late in the spring. That costs us a lot of money. So if we haven't put aside money and saved money, now if we happen to have a good year and we don't have to plow as much and we don't have to put as much money away to pay for those heating costs, we can then maybe buy a few Chromebooks at the end of the year or some supplies that we really could use, right, for the betterment of the school. And principals often have some money set aside. They make sure that if there isn't an emergency, they can spend some money. So this is a very typical happenstance in every school district. It's hard to truly get away from when you're sort of fighting with a fixed budget. So other than that, I'm happy to, everything here, other than that, really should have a pretty concise plan of action. Many of these items have already been resolved if you read the notes. I'm happy to answer any questions now, or if you have questions later on any of these items, you're welcome to email me, call me, stop in.
I believe we have a policy on how to handle the graduating account. I believe we actually have a policy on how to handle the accounts.
Which accounts?
The seniors, when the seniors are graduating.
Yes,
what happens at the funds.
yes.
I believe we have a policy for that. If you need that, I can send you the letter, if it helps you for it.
Right, yeah.
For the future.
I was really glad to see the kind of pushing back on the actuary to ensure it's complete and accurate. And said they're not going to go fishing for 20-year-old data. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good evening. So we welcomed 2,926 students into our school district this week. And the most important part of the message I'm going to send you is we sent home safely 2,926 students. Yes. God bless you.
I hate Steve. Did we not go over the grant funding?
We did.
We did? Okay, didn't want to go more in depth? Okay, no problem, thank you.
You could have asked questions.
No, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
That's gross.
It is.
Okay, we all good?
I have another one in my pocket, but I wear the one you gave me, Bill. Thank you, sir.
Okay, we're gonna start again. So this week, we welcomed 2,926 students into our school district this week. Like I said, the most important part of that message is we sent home safely 2,926 students. As important as Tuesday was for our first day of students, first day of school for our students from grades 1 through 12. Today is probably our most nervous and challenging day, right? So today was our first day for our kindergarten students. Today was the first day for 185 new kindergarten students, both at Mile Tree and at Green Meadows. It was wonderful to see them. The principals did a great job in dismissing them. The district staff was all there to help out arrival and dismissal, and we made sure we got them home safely as well too. So it was a great first day for all of our new 185 kindergarten students as well. This past week has been really a great first week for both teachers, staff, and students. We started out last week with bringing some teachers back with some great professional learning provided by our admin team. Lisa Curtin, our new director of curriculum and professional learning, our principals, and our instructional coaches. This past Friday was our convocation as well too. We had as a keynote speaker, it was Jessica Minahan. She is the author of the book called The Behavior Code. She provided for all our staff a hands-on approach for dealing with the anxiety that students might be dealing with as they return to school. I happened to be at Mile Tree yesterday, and there was a brand new first grade student that hadn't been in school yet. That was his first day, was this Tuesday, because kindergarten was all remote for him, so it was his very first day. And was having some struggle in there for his first day. But our principal, Shante Gilson, was handling it really well, and actually started doing some strategies that we learned from Jessica Minahan. The evaluation was outstanding from our teachers. We sent an eval out to our teachers and staff, I should be saying staff, that all participated well too. It was really outstanding. Certainly a different type of convocation keynote speaker that we had. Many of you in the past had a chance to listen to Nelville Marcus Green or Mark Brackett, but she was certainly different, certainly gave us hands-on, and it was great. The only other thing I'd like to recognize this week, we had new teacher orientation. I know Michelle and Lisa were able to join us. We welcomed, and I think you can see a picture up there, 55 new staff members into the Hampden-Wilbraham Regional School District. That includes teachers, paras, custodians, cafeteria workers, combination. They go through an entire day with us. I have to tell you that 55 is and still counting. We're still looking to hire some additional staff, in particular paras as well. It was a great day for all of our new staff. We gave introductions to all the district staff, principals as well too. We had professional learning, and certainly a nice lunch for all of us to be able to sit together with our new staff. It's one of the things that I think we do really well is bringing our staff in. I received numerous emails. I think I shared some of them with you as well too from the new staff that came on board. The last thing, I'm trying to be mindful of our time because I know we have a lot on the agenda tonight, especially with public comment. Last thing I want to sort of give you an update on is the strategic plan, and then Maury can answer your question as well too.
Before you do that, could you just answer a quick
Sure,
question?
sorry. I should
How
be
many
pausing.
more
Any
teachers-
questions?
How many more teaching staff need to be hired?
I can get you that number. It's not really, we're not really looking at this point for classroom teachers, Cheryl. Those are all in play. It's more the specialties like our paras, our special education staff.
Yeah.
So we're still looking at.
We're on numbers. So positive news, right? Looks like as of the 10/1/2020, if we compare it to today, we've got 56 more students,
Correct.
which is massive if we continue that. But looking at that, it looks like there's a huge swing year over year in pre-K kindergarten one. So it looks like it's 16 more in pre-K, 28 more in kindergarten, 16 more in first. Is that representative of families choosing alternate education opportunities last year, or is that representative of a true population swing? And if it is the second, are we looking at what the next grade looks like in the buildings where we have some capacity challenges?
Yep. So one of the things, and I'm gonna move that now if I could, then, so if Aaron, if you could point up the enrollment chart that's up there as well too. That's, I know, yeah, we'll work on getting that for next time.
Maybe that 250 that is on that line.
So Patrick's point, our enrollment is for now, and again, this is please ever changing. But please know that as of today, we have 2,926 in the entire district. To Patrick's point, at Mile Tree, we have 138 kindergarten, which is average about 19.7 students, about 19-20 students in each one of the classrooms. When I'm looking at numbers, I looked at Green Meadows. One of the things that we put in this year was an additional kindergarten, so 3 kindergartens at Green Meadows, and we'll be looking at each year as that moves up, that swing will be taking place and continue to move up as well too. But we had a big influx in our kindergarten this year. Could be for a number of different reasons. Some of the conversations that we had was parents that were going to hold kids back to kindergarten when they were doing remote, which educationally certainly was a prerogative for parents to do, but we certainly have an influx in our kindergarten. I hope I answered your question, Patrick. But we're looking ahead at each grade level to make sure.
Just trying to make sure it's population boom or
Yeah.
just people coming back to this.
Combination of both, I think. Okay,
Al, it's 7 kindergarten at Mile Tree, correct?
yes, that's correct. So it's about 19 students in each class. 138.
You get like an extra hour or an extra. or something.
If I didn't round it to the exact point,
I know,
Patrick would
just-
call me out and say it's 19.7. I just, and from Green Meadows is 47, so it's roughly about 15 or 16 in each one of the classrooms. Those are actually great numbers for our kindergarten. To start out with the para support, those are those foundation years. Those kids are coming in, that some of them haven't been in school at all, not even in preschool. So we're glad our numbers are that low, that's those younger grades. Any questions on the enrollment? So to the positive, our enrollment number is increasing overall district to 2,926, which is up. And we still have enrollments taking place on a daily basis as well too. Great. I should be pausing. Any questions on that at all? Gina Khan, I'd like to ask you just to join us and give us a little bit of an update what's taking place with the strategic plan, the work that's been done so far. Thank you.
Hi all, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. So I know that you've had the presentation from Mars. That's really funny, isn't it? The presentation from Mars. And so you're familiar with the process of the strategic plan. And what is happening now is that process is moving forward in terms of the components. The first component being the assembly of the strategic planning team. And so outreach has happened to both towns, the chairs of the board of selectmen, requesting that they assist with the designation or recommendation of individuals that represent the town in terms of elected officials, appointed officials, people who understand the towns very well from that point of view. There are other stakeholders, other sectors that we need to assemble, and we are working on that. So that will include parents, and so the recommendation being representatives from school councils. The principals have been asked to be thinking about that. It's a little bit early in the year to be really looking at that, but we really need to move forward. There will be a couple of principals that are moving along with us, and of course, teachers, community members. And this is the team, which is very different from the many opportunities that will be built in, as I understand, And as you've heard in the presentation, periodically along the way, in terms of the focus groups and the surveys and the ways in which the input is collected. So the role of the team is really to sort through these data that are being collected and to really kind of assist in through each lens, that prism that is formed through our respective vantage points. What do those data mean? And it's similar, I think, to some of the conversations that were happening earlier tonight. So that's where we're at. I am pleased to be involved.
So the most important thing is that you meet someone.
Almost forgot. Yes. I am hoping that one outcome of my being with you tonight is that a member of the school committee will become a member of the strategic planning team. And it is a big commitment, but you know, you guys are all about big commitments, so here you are. The first meeting is scheduled, I wrote it down so I wouldn't mess it up. The organizational meeting, if we can put all the pieces together, will be September 29th from 5 to 6:30. And then going forward from that, there will be monthly meetings, and I think the tentative plan is the third Wednesday of the month, and I believe that they said for about an hour, looking at kind of that really 5 to 6, 5:30 to 6:30 neighborhood. So, you know, among us, I hope that somebody will be really excited about this and enjoy the journey. And I will ask you, Michelle, to maybe figure that out with.
I'd be interested if, is anyone else interested?
Yeah, I would just get part of that. Students, just the new parents, Michelle.
I would be more than happy to allow somebody else on the committee.
So Gina, it's always in the 5 to 6:30 range of time.
So my understanding, again, from our people from Mars is that we will be, that first meeting will be the place where we will be discussing the times and dates of subsequent meetings. But we had to have a sort of a working idea of it. So that's the starting point is the third Wednesdays of the month, a little earlier to give people time to move on.
And this will be the overarching team, right? Someone that the town has selected, someone that both communities have selected. It's the overarching team.
I would also be very interested.
That's what I bet. I mean, it's like all of us almost.
Yeah. So Sean, Bill, Cheryl, Mark.
Oh, do you decide at this moment?
I don't think we have to decide right at this moment, but that's good. But to be completely honest, like there was, we weren't gonna have anyone that was interested on it because it's a huge commitment. So this is a good thing. We'd rather go in this direction than not. So thank you very much. Okay. Perfect. Can I just, well, just share here, safety that we've been talking about, and I'll just, well, I know it's been on the future agenda item with the chief coming up in the next soon, but we'll be getting everyone together in the executive session to talk about our safety and our buildings in that district, correct?
Looking forward to that. That's, I think that's something that we have really worked hard on over the years that I see former Chief Farnsworth with us here, who has been a fixture in that and really one of the architects of that process. But the ability to get together and see where we're at. So yes, I think again, that there's some talk about data again, that this is a place, a time of year where we are collecting some information that then becomes relevant to those discussions. So as soon as we can, I guess is the answer, as soon as we can.
So is there a date, is there a tentative date right now that we're looking at or considering?
I think we're just trying to coordinate calendars, but it will be an executive session, obviously, like that's happened before. It's just trying to get the new chief. We actually had a chance to visit chief in Hampton as well too. So we're just trying to finalize dates between everybody involved.
Okay, because I know that we have that on our year-long agenda calendar for September.
Yep.
We might want to consider inviting former Chief Farnsworth, if he's willing to, for continuity.
Great. Thank you, Gina.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it very, very much. Thank you. So just a couple things and then I'll be done. So the other thing, I think I've sent connected messages and we're working on that. Yeah, coming out a little staticky. It's not on our end, it's on connected. So I appreciate people letting me know that they've been coming out staticky. They sound great but they always sound great when I'm putting them out. Until I hear them not come out so well. We were having issues with our buses. It's day 3. They're running late. In particular today, they ran even later. I gotta just be honest with you, our kindergarten teachers and our kindergarten principals are just doing unbelievable checks and balances. And we were at bus stop today, just calming parents down and talking to parents. The buses are running late, but we're just working out those first couple of days. And today was even a little bit later due to making sure our kindergartens were getting on safely. It looked really different. I had the opportunity at Green Meadows and I had an opportunity at Mile Tree. You know, at Green Meadows, you saw a lot of siblings, right? So it was a new kindergarten, they might have an older brother in grade 5 or grade 6 holding their hand and buddying up as they were getting on the buses. Wasn't necessarily so, there was some siblings at Mile Tree, but not as many of them, right? Because the grade configuration as well too, but we're just making sure our students get home safe. That's our number 1 priority these first couple of days. So I apologize for the buses being as late as they are. There are some districts that are running even later. Not that we're comparing ourselves to the others, but we're working on it. Aaron sent an email actually out to Roland today. We're trying to work to try to improve it as well too. But just know, we just don't want to make any mistakes. We're just going really slow at this point.
So now that's at the beginning of the day and the end of the day too, correct? Because I've also heard that there are some kids that are getting home later than they should.
Yeah, it's really getting home that the lateness is occurring. We've been sending out connected messages for that as well too, but it's mostly at the end of the day. Not all of them, but
But
just,
there's no tardiness at the beginning of the day? Oh, there is.
we're not locking students tardy at the beginning of the day if they're coming due because of late bus.
Yeah, I only ask because at that time I'm learning that we're always. teaching, so.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Do you know what the root cause? I'm sorry, go ahead, Cheryl.
I just want to, I've seen a lot on social media, a lot of the stories, and I understand that when your child's little, you want them home. But the other night, when I couldn't sleep, and I started watching TV again, and it was the flood in New York and in New Jersey that happened this week. And there was a bus driver, his bus was 45 degrees in the water. And he was taking out one by one those children and putting them on a car, putting them anywhere safely could. And I think our bus drivers do a whole lot more throughout the year, keeping our kids safe than just this little piece in the beginning that's always a bit of a problem.
Agreed.
Yeah, do we know what the root cause is of this issue with the buses?
So it's a number, it's a number of different things, right? It's us being a little more cautious on this end. What number bus, Michelle, you're getting on, just double checking, triple checking, making sure they're getting on safe. The bus drivers don't necessarily know the moms and dads as well, right? The kids might not know the bus drivers. They're slowing down, making sure that there's a parent there. They don't know the parents at this point. So it's just, all it takes is just a little bit delay in each school, and then it just compiles up as well too. Our bus drivers are new, a lot of new hires, so they don't know the routes as well as they necessarily do. I was sitting at the corner of Main and can't think of the name of the street, and the bus flew right by me. I went with parents, it just flew right by us. Until I had to call Sherry, he was a new bus driver, he's still learning the route, so I just asked that he give us a little bit of time, we're working it out, and in particular, when we had our kindergarten in there, but we'll certainly tighten it up as it goes on.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah. So last thing, Laura, I know you asked that question, it was sort of part of my superintendent's report. So last Friday, the commissioners informed superintendents about the mandatory mask. But to our surprise, or I should say not to our surprise, but something that we've been looking at. He informed us that there's the possible opportunity for students who test positive in school, test positive due to school or even quarantine, to receive some type of remote education. Different than a cohort D from last year. Now, please appreciate, up until last Friday, you've heard me say, you heard from the commissioner, all those information I sent out to you, there's no remote education taking place. That wasn't even a possibility. No remote teachers. We weren't planning for any of that. So this was something that sort of caught all of us as superintendents off guard. So we're looking at, hopefully, we're working right now with our principals, working with our administration, myself, the admin team, we're working on coming up with exactly what that's going to look like. It's going to look different than cohort D was last year. It's not the same open door that we had last year. Our goal, let's be very honest, quoting what Kiara told us as well too, if our students continue to wear masks, they're keeping them socially distanced, they're hand sanitizing, we have that test and stay, right? And the older students from ages 12 up are getting vaccinated, there's gonna be fewer and fewer students that are gonna even need to be hopefully either test positive or have to be quarantined. Know that we're working on it. We had a meeting with our principals again yesterday as well too. My goal for next school committee meeting is to come back and give you an overall what that education is going to look like for students who have to test, who have to test positive or who have to quarantine because of close contact.
So Kiara mentioned 12 student staff that are currently quarantined. So some number of that are students.
Yeah.
How are they receiving education?
Yeah. So from what we're looking at right now, Patrick, the ones that are missing these first 3 days of education, these first. So that's what the principals are handling it at their building and their teachers are handling it if any student was absent. So we had attendance throughout our entire district, there's a number of students that were absent. So for those first couple of days, if a parent reaches out, needs some work from the teachers, we're providing it, but we're handling it like we've always done in the past.
So we could have students quarantining for 10 days and they're receiving no live instruction whatsoever.
So we don't have any students that are going to be up for 10 days right now. It's looking at that our students will be coming back on Friday that were tested positive. But we're not at this point providing live instruction right now to our students. We're providing them information. We're providing them work if they need it at this point. The difference this time, Patrick, is if a student's out now because they're testing positive, is because they're sick, right? And they're not feeling well. So it's different than it was when we were cohort D and students and parents chose to elect students to learn remotely. So there's a factor of that as well too. But we're working.
Or they're unvaccinated.
Or they're not vaccinated.
So, I mean, it's just a little concerning. We don't meet again until Thursday, September 23rd. So that's multiple weeks that you potentially have students that aren't receiving live instruction. Depending on what category they fall in. I'd like to think that we move faster than September 23rd at the time.
Yep. So I'm going to give you the plan, we'll roll that out for us September 23rd, but we're working on that even this past week and we'll be working on it next week. So we're ready for those students already. So we're not waiting till that time, but that'll be the time I'll give you that. And I'll give you some written information between that and what that looks like.
Thank you.
When do you expect to have something in place by?
There's a couple of different things we're looking at right now, Sean, right? Looks a little different at the elementary level than it looks like at the secondary level.
Right.
What we want to make sure is that we're being consistent across our entire district. We have families that have students at the high school level and have students at the elementary level. The education looks different, and the way they receive it remotely looks different as well too. But our plan is, like I said, next week, we're going to be working again with our principals and administrators. We're working to get that in play. It's the first few days of school. We're just working that all out right now. But I'll give you updated information as soon as we got a final.
So you're saying sometime next week we should have a plan?
Yeah, we're working that. Yes, my goal is that. Yes.
All right, good, thank you.
And respectfully, this is something working with the union with. So in the past, right, we had a part of our MOA and our MOU, and that was the type of education we were delivering. So that's part of the working group that we're doing with our union.
We also have a lot of experience for
We do.
the different cohorts and different ways we've done it before and
Yep.
stuff like that. And I'm
We
sure
do.
the teachers have preferences as
Yep.
well.
Because you guys were also during your retreat, I thought we're gonna kind of have that discussion about what worked, what didn't work.
Yep, and we
And,
did,
you know.
and part of the work, the professional learning work that took place this past week with Lisa and the instructional coaches was at that K1, 2 level, what that would look like in the tools that they need. Remember last year, we had to place those remote teachers. Started out pretty rough for us with those remote teachers, but we know at the end how successful that was. We don't have those in play this year. So we're working with the teachers and working with them to get them the tools that they need to be ready. Again, we're really expecting it's gonna be those younger grades that, and I'm hoping it's not so, that are gonna have the impact with the students that might be testing positive.
So you mentioned waiting till the whole district to do.
Yep.
Does that mean that we have the capability for some grades today to deliver live instruction for students that are quarantined?
So in some abilities we do, but we have to, when we open up that door, Patrick, we have to be extremely careful. So one of the things that if we were to say, or to use the example, if we're opening up at the high school where we could do live instruction, what does that look like for our students that might have an IEP? What does that look like for the whole picture of that. Remember last year, we had the ability across our entire district to deliver that type of education remotely. We're just talking maybe 1 or 2 students that happen to be in that particular class. If they receive special education services, they receive OT, PT, all the way along, gotta take that all into account. So, yeah, and so that might be one of the things that I'm gonna be speaking to you about, that maybe at the secondary level, we start that a little bit earlier, a little bit sooner than we do at the elementary level. But it's all your conversation we're having with principals. Thank you. And the last thing, just so everyone aware, and I know you see Erin here, that's working hard on our first day, is reminded Kate's retirement party. Kate Belsky, after 20 years of service, is Thursday, September 9th. I'd love to welcome all of us in the school committee to join us at the Wilbraham Country Club from 4 to 7. I hope you guys can join us for that as well. And that's the end of my superintendent report. Questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment.
Erin, you got it first.
Did anyone not get a chance to sign up that wanted to sign up? I think there's someone back there. Anybody else over here?
And we will be calling on those who have signed up for public comment. We'll also call for the person after the person that will be speaking, just to be on deck. We do ask that when called, each person, let's just move the chair over there, that each person state their name and address and sit at the designated location and speak for up to 2.5 minutes. Sean Kennedy will be monitoring time. And if we could also ask if people in the audience would remain respectful and quiet and not be speaking while the person delivering the public comment is speaking. And I apologize for mispronouncing anyone's name. So actually, I don't know.
Want to start with the one that was.
So I do have one.
Yeah, we'll find out.
So while we're getting the names from everybody. This is from Denise Amaral from 12 Highmore Drive in Wilbraham. She was not able to attend the school committee meeting tonight and asked for her letter to be read during public comment. My name is Denise Amaral, and I'm a resident of Wilbraham and a parent of 2 children in the Hamden-Wilbraham Regional School District. I'm writing to express my support of our district moving forward with the equity audit. It was indicated to families in the district that an audit was likely going to take place, and there were resources being spent on choosing the firm that would be completing the audit. There appeared to be consensus that this was the plan, and that it was one of the best ways we as a district could ensure that we are providing each and every child with the highest level of comprehensive, fair, and equitable education. There were students themselves who presented to you their experiences in our schools and made the plea to you directly to continue on the path of the audit. They spoke highly of their schools and teachers and also pointed out areas where they had less than ideal experiences. For their sake and the sake of those coming up behind them in the school system, they asked you to learn as much as possible about how to improve our schools. There are students of all races, genders, orientations, and abilities in our district. Information from an equity audit stands to give us direction on how to help each and every student in the district meet their fullest potential. Isn't that our goal for our education system, to allow every student to succeed? My understanding is that the school committee will be soon working on a new strategic plan for the district. It seems as if the most comprehensive strategic plan would have to take all available data into account, including the results of an equity audit. Moving forward with a new strategic plan without the information from the equity audit would be a huge waste of resources. It has been quite disheartening that something as simple as an equity audit has become such a divisive issue. That the idea of learning how to give the children what they need to succeed has some people upset. I will choose to believe that the majority of the people in this district want to remove barriers so that all of our kids can excel, no matter their circumstances. As a parent of children in the district and one who is quite involved in school life, I'm asking you to please move forward with the planned equity audit. We owe it to our children to inform ourselves how to most effectively give them the best chance to succeed. Thank you for your consideration of my perspective and for all the time and energy putting into serving our district. Okay, so we're going to start online with Megan Duber.
Can you see me?
We can hear you.
Okay, I'm on a mobile device, so I'm not quite sure how to start my camera, so I'll start speaking. My name is Megan Dubord from 11 Mountain Brook Road. I'm speaking tonight as a parent of 3 young children. One is currently enrolled at Mile Tree and one at Stony Hill. My husband was born and raised in Wilbraham, and one of the main reasons we chose to make Wilbraham our home is because of the school system. We have been very fortunate to have had a wonderful experience so far within the school system, but I recognize that our experience isn't necessarily the same as all of the members of our community. Our experiences as a community are varied. I have heard this firsthand, and this is why I stand in strong support of the equity audit. I teach my children that no one is perfect. We are always learning, and this is how I feel about our school system. Simply put, when we know better, we can do better. And the equity audit is a wonderful opportunity to identify how we can best provide all of the children in our community with an equitable education. That's it. Thank you.
We just turned off volume of this.
Doesn't sound like an owl, it sounds like a Tweety bird.
And that's our only one. Aaron, is your.
How's that?
Yeah.
Better?
Can you hear me? I'm not sure how it's coming through.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, should I read my statement over?
No, you're all set.
No, we heard it.
Okay. Sorry. So Renee Bracy, and then we're gonna call, is Maggie Tran? Okay, so you're on deck, so Renee's gonna go first.
And people will actually come to me. So my name is Renee Bracy. I live at 50 Brainerd Road in Wilbraham. I'm here to let you know that a petition was started last week to support the proposal for an equity audit. If you check your emails, you'll see that I've sent you that audit or sent you that petition. In it, it asks that today a motion be made and a vote conducted to move forward with the proposed equity audit with a hard deadline for completion. There's more to it, but in the interest of time, I'll be brief. This petition has garnered 460 signatures. 61% of them has come from Hamden and Wilbraham residents. 49% includes alumni, school faculty and staff, and community members. Every single name has been vetted to be authentic and to have a vested interest in our district conducting this audit. This petition is very personal for many of the signers. Sean, you will see that your sister Karen signed. Cheryl, you will see that your neighbors Misa and John Lambert signed. Patrick, some of your kids' teammates, their parents signed. You'll see Maura and Michelle that several of the Hamden parents have signed. Minister Paul Nesbitt from the Wilbraham United Church also signed. And Mr. Ganem, you will see that current students, former students, and many of your staff have also signed. So 3 times now I've come here and I've brought you signatures of support, and each time more and more community members are signing on. Our community wants this. So please make this motion and vote yes. What we know better, when we know better, we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Aaron Abdamase. A little closer.
I'm gonna keep coming to the end.
Hello, my name is Maggie Tran. I live on 4 Bridle Path Road in Wilbraham. I'm here to ask you to commit to the equity audit. I ask that you collect the data, commit on doing the equity audit before your strategic plan, and find your blind spots. I am a mother of 3 young boys, a minority, disabled, and I have a bachelor's in mathematics. Every part of me implores you to do the equity audit. My husband and I chose to start a family in Wilbraham because of the school system. It is great that alumni and residents take pride in the school district, but it does not rank highly compared to other districts in the state. The equity audit can uncover how the district can do better to allocate resources and become more competitive. Without the data from the audit, the district's strategic plan will have unknown gaps. At the age of 16, when trying to get my driver's permit, I went to the eye doctor to discover that I have a degenerative retinal disease. I never knew. My brain doesn't show me what my blind spots are. I don't see things like a piece of Swiss cheese. I can't see the whole picture. My brain pieces together a scene, and I think I can see everything, but I end up colliding in a fruit stand at Big Y. It does not matter how slowly or carefully I walk. I cannot see everything. I have to rely on others to assess the room and on tools like my cane to tell me what my blind spots are. Use the equity audit to discover your blind spots and use the strategic plan to make improvements or to find out that the district is perfect the way it is. Be brave and admit that you don't know what you don't know. Get the data. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie.
Next.
Entertain a second. I'm just gonna keep doing it. I'm gonna do this all day. You grow up with a name like a Dempsey, you learn, you know.
Instead of Dempsey.
You should have. Oh, yeah, all right, really slow.
Sorry,
No, no, it's good, you're good. It's Abdelmacy, Abdelmacy.
Okay,
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah, no, you're good, you're good.
Give it a shot.
Just so you know, Ben, anyway, you're on deck.
All right, and I'm Aaron Abdelmacy for Bridle Path. Patrick, thank you for asking the questions about the virtual learning plan. As a parent who had to get one of my kids COVID tested literally the day before school started, negative test, thankfully. Really interested in what's going to happen when, in theory, kids get sick and can't come in. Really interested to hear what happens. So thank you for the time tonight. I cut this back a lot with the 2.5 minute time limit. I just wanted to make a quick comment tonight in support of both funding an equity audit and setting a timeline for getting it done. As a district, we don't know what we don't know. It's a theme we're hearing a lot about tonight. Cheryl, you were talking about the curriculum subcommittee and needing to put together a dashboard to gather the data. You talked about your data blind spots, right? Maura, Sean, last year, you asked for weeks, and then I apologize for picking on you a little bit, but for weeks, you kept coming back to these meetings saying, how many kids do we have that don't have access to the internet at home? How many kids do we have in the district who don't have laptops? And it was like 3 meetings in a row that you were trying to get this data. That's 6 weeks of data that you just, of kids. We didn't know how many kids didn't have access to the internet at home. I watched you struggling to get those answers because I understand metrics are hard to gather at scale. Data like that was essential to providing equitable access to remote learning last year. Without that data, our district was leaving some kids behind. We didn't know who, we didn't know how many, we didn't know how to fix it. We didn't know the problem, we couldn't fix the problem. So what else don't we know? What other kids are we leaving behind as a district? Our district is falling behind other districts in the state. Test scores are falling, not precipitously, but they're falling. Our ranking in overall, our overall ranking in the state of Massachusetts is falling. Our math and reading proficiencies are falling. We're less competitive now than we were when my wife and I moved here to start a family over a decade ago. So as a parent of multiple kids who are going to go through this school district, I'm concerned that we're falling behind because we just don't know where to make the right investments. So please, I'm just asking you tonight, please just vote to fund and perform an equity audit, get the data, and use that to inform the next long-term strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. What I'm gonna do is, for 1 minute, I'm just gonna hold up a one. On 2 minutes, I'll have my hand up, and then you have 30 seconds, and when 10 seconds is left, I'll just say 10 seconds, and then when 2.5 minutes is done, I just ask you to stop talking. Does that work for everybody, or would that be too distracting? Okay.
Is Benjamin Hemingway here?
Yes.
Okay, and then Christine Goonan, you're on deck, please.
So I'm Benjamin Hemingway from 934 Glendale Road in Wilbraham. I'll try and keep this short. So I actually have questions for both the board and the administration, so more than a statement. I'm opposing the equity audit. And the questions that I have for you are, why wouldn't you just start with an internal self-audit first in regards to equity and equality? If it's a big concern, would we not start with the cheapest attempt first? You know, why replace the motor when we can do the spark plug, basically? Secondly would be, where's the accountability lie? You know, if you guys are going to push this forward, are you prepared for the outcomes of it? Specifically with the administration, you know, every audit has repercussions. And my example would be, if there's a shortcoming in the audit that's showing that we have basically already have rules and policy in place, where if that shortcoming shows up and that those policies weren't being enforced, that's on you guys. And if it is, what's the repercussions for it? Via demotions, job losses? This is what happens in the corporate world. You know, when companies do this, there's repercussions with these audits, whether it's financial or whether it's shortcomings within a company. And then secondly, what's the big hurry? We have a unique opportunity with East Long Meadow and Long Meadow. It's not apples to apples, but the demographics are close enough to where we can kind of compare to them and see how it affects them. Give it a couple of years. We don't know what the outcomes of these are. There's a lot of information, and this is all very new to all of us. And then lastly, well, not lastly, but are we prepared for the long-term effects of this? You know, 5, 6, 10 years down the road, the effects that we could have on the school system, as far as people like myself, if I don't like the outcomes, I'm not sending my kids. If I'm not sending my kids, I'm not paying the taxes that I'm paying in this town. So I might as well move to a different town with a lower tax base and pay for private school. Are you guys ready for that? Because then it's going to affect us on a state level for funding, because you have enrollment. And I feel like there's probably a lot of people who feel strongly in that aspect. You can't, once you said earlier, once you open a door, it's hard to shut them. If you open this door, can you shut it? So, and then I'd like to see us go towards roots of in-house. How about uniforms? We can talk about things. You guys did the school lunch. I think it was a very good thing. So anyways, thank you.
John Hirsch, you're on deck.
Christine Gowan, 423 Main Street in Wilbraham. I wanted to start off by thanking you for questioning the science when it comes to masks at the last committee meeting. As was pointed out, there is no good data to support that masks work at stopping or reducing viral transmission. In fact, they could be inflicting our kids with a variety of different harms. I encourage you to visit the website, followthemaxscience.com, to review the research yourself. I also urge you to question the other data that you are receiving. You receive a lot of data on the number of cases, but what is a case? And is it something we need to fear? A case is just a positive test, and keep in mind that all the tests being used are only emergency use authorized, which means they are not validated using the typical rigorous scientific methods. These tests are known to be inaccurate, and the inventor of the PCR test, along with the package insert, states that they should never be used to diagnose disease. So what does a positive PCR test actually mean? You probably assume that it detects the virus, but it actually just detects a piece of RNA that is assumed to come from the virus. It does not mean that you will get sick, nor does it mean that you can transmit the virus. In fact, if you test positive and have no symptoms, there is no credible scientific evidence that you will spread the virus. So why are we quarantining perfectly healthy kids? You also receive a lot of data on vaccination rates and are told the reason we have such high cases is that we have low vaccination rates. But is that true? The FDA EUA authorizations and the package insert for the one vaccine with FDA approval make it clear that there is no evidence that the vaccine can prevent recipients from becoming infected with and transmitting the virus. The vaccine is only intended to prevent severe disease. It does not protect others. So I ask this committee, if the vaccines do not stop transmission and do not prevent a person from being diagnosed with COVID-19, how are they going to result in lower cases? And why are we treating the unvaccinated kids different from the vaccinated when we know that the vaccinated can transmit the virus just as much as the unvaccinated? And what about natural immunity? Studies show that natural immunity is superior than vaccination. Why aren't we collecting data on the staff and students who have natural immunity? I realize it takes a lot of bravery to take the road less traveled. It is much easier just to put your head down, not ask any questions, and just follow the orders. But we must do better than that. Our kids deserve better. There are other schools that have never implemented the recommended COVID policies, and they and their students are thriving. They knew these policies were not backed by science and could do far more harm than good. Please
Thank you.
continue to question the data and think critically and be brave.
Jen, you're next.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Who's up next?
It's John first.
Oh,
Jen.
sorry about that. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. I didn't realize the policy had changed when you came over with the mask. I was kind of in my own world, so I apologize for that. This I want to submit. I don't know who I do that to for the record. Okay. Okay. Let it be known for the committee. My name is John Kirsch, as it was already stated, Ms. Kennedy. I'm sorry, I'm in Hampton. Thank you. Let it be shown for the record that the committee should now be aware, now that I've given you all of the research on what an equity audit is, and that the process leads directly, doesn't matter the company, to the implementation of critical race theory and principle. And it only brings the community pain. It happens through lawsuits, high costs of implementation, teacher turnover, student turnover, civil unrest, and performance also tends to suffer. It's also a clear violation of civil rights laws. In short, it's a nightmare for anybody that does it. It even hurts the children supposed to help. I'm shocked we're here again on this matter, actually. The reason we're here is because Mr. Kennedy, at the last meeting, used parliamentary procedures to get this back on the docket. This is a mulligan, I guess. If you join him in voting for this, the parents, teachers, and the overall community will hold all of you responsible for the inevitable results. That's what's going to happen. And local history will judge you. You will be, I fear to God, you're going to be seen through the same historical lens as a George Wallace, or God forbid, a Bull Connor. You guys don't know what you're doing. You're playing with fire. If you join, and the evidence that I've provided to you, I don't think is going to make a difference. I really don't. I think you guys are, it's a fait accompli. You're just going to vote this through. You're not thinking about it. You're not looking at what's really going to happen. Okay? I pray you're going to do the right thing, but I'm an agnostic, and I don't think you're going to make a believer of me tonight. I also don't believe that the results matter to some committee members. I fear that that's the case. Because you're treating this equity audit like a kid with a magnifying glass just burning ants. Their ants are crawling up the side of your house. You're going to burn your house to the ground with this thing. Okay, that's just the reality. You can hate me all you want, but that's what's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to take 5 or 10 years, but when you institutionalize discrimination, which is what this does, it's ultimately going to result in a civil rights nightmare. You're going to have pain, and you shouldn't do it, and you should know better. This is wrong to discriminate against children. Martin Luther King, I guess you guys didn't hear, the civil rights fight was already done. Civil rights won. Martin Luther King Jr. won.
10 seconds.
And I'm sorry, can you stop interrupting me? I really would appreciate that. Martin Luther King Jr. won. Judge these kids by the content of their character.
All right, time's up.
Not by their race, their religion, their sexuality, or any of those unrealistic things.
Thank you.
If I could say, if you don't want me calling out the time just before, just say you don't want me calling out the time and I'll just tell you when it's ended.
Can I ask a point of order? And this is up front under parliamentary office rules, right? So point of order in reference to the meeting, how the meeting is going.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Pete Harrington, please. Are you here? Thank you. And then we have Joe Wallace around desk. Thank you.
Joe's been sitting there the whole time, so. Didn't want to have to move your seat. There you go. Sorry.
Okay.
Just name and
My
number.
name is Patricia Harrington. I live on in Hamden on North Road. I lived for 20 years in Wilbraham, and now I've lived for 10 years in Hamden. I'm a retired teacher. I still work in the school systems. And I have 2 sons that graduated from high school. I'm adamantly opposed to this audit. First of all, it pits people against each other, which I've already seen in this town. I've never seen it before, never. Okay, then the academic decline that was spoken about between when my sons graduated and now, the decline has been astronomical. We used to be 1 and 2 with Long Meadow. Now we're in the 20s. And the reason for that is because so much time is spent on all these stupid social issues. Bullying, LGBTQ, critical race theory, all this stuff all the time. Keep the politics out of the schools and teach the kids and get back to academics, period. And then I wanted to ask, do we want an outside firm to come in and judge us? They don't have a vested interest in us. We can do that ourselves. We're all intelligent, educated people here. If we have a problem, let's work here and solve it. We don't want any outsiders coming in and telling us what to do. And lastly, I'm going to share a personal story for you. I'm going to change everything because the identity, I want to keep it private. So I work with a student who has an IEP. He has a lot of learning problems. I'm a retired reading teacher. We're practicing fluency, because he has a hard time unscrambling words to put them in the right order. He has to work where you don't have to work, and you don't have to work, and I don't have to work. And instead of reading the passage the way as quickly as he can, because I time him and that's what we're working on, he's changing the pronouns to gender neutral pronouns. That's a crime. He's a child. He needs to learn how to read.
2 minutes and 30 seconds. Thank you.
That's a social.
Thank you for on deck. Linda, are you here? Okay, you're on deck, please.
Joe Loss, Warren Road, Wilbraham. Talk of the equity audit has really caused a considerable focus on superficial things that our kids can't control. And, you know, the audits that I've researched several audits, and the audits I've seen, including Long Meadow, which I know we've talked about Long Meadow several times, have yielded articles, resources, books that to me are completely divisive to our communities. One of the books is this book called Not My Idea, A Book of Whiteness. I'm going to read 2 pages of this book to the group. Whiteness is a bad deal. It always was. Contract binding you to whiteness, you get stolen land, stolen riches, special favors. Whiteness gets to mess endlessly with the lives of your friends, neighbors, loved ones, and fellow humans of color for the purpose of profit. Sign below your soul. You get land, riches, and favors may be revoked at any time for any reason. And it looks like a picture of a devil. You're signing a deal with the devil. The reason I bring this to everybody's attention is all this talk about the equity audit is dividing our community. You heard several speakers talk about it. This is not bringing people together. We're talking about equity. We're not talking about diversity and inclusion. We're grouping people into classes, and we're primarily talking about their differences. What I handed out here is a wheel of diversity. It talks about, I think most of us know the primary levels of diversity: age, race, sex. We do understand those things, right? But we don't talk enough about the secondary things that make us alike. All of us are alike. And I think in this school district, why don't we talk about how kids are alike, no matter what color their skin is, no matter what their sexual orientation is. Maybe they play a sport together. Maybe they love football or baseball. Maybe they play an instrument in the band together. That's the type of stuff we should be talking about. But these audits are not doing that. They're dividing people. They're saying, you're in this class and that's who you are. And you're in this class, that's who you are. But that's not what diversity and inclusion is. It's about taking everybody and bringing them together. What makes everybody in this school the same? We're all Americans, first and foremost. And then secondly, you know what else we are? We're all from Wilbraham. We're in this community. We're Minnetonka. We're Falcons. And that's who we are. We need to focus on that. Let's capture that and bring the community together. Stop trying to divide people. I agree. I oppose the audit, but I agree with us doing something internally to make everybody better. Thank you.
James Smith, you're on deck.
My name is Linda DeGrady. I live on 7 Pleasant View Road. I speak in support of the equity audit. I do want to respond to 2 comments from a previous meeting. Mr. Lenahan questioned the role of the committee in improving an audit as outside of policy oversight. I disagree. This equity audit is in concert with the resolution that the committee passed in the prior year. Dr. Bontempi asked about supporting data for such an audit. With all due respect, the audit is a data collection tool that gathers both qualitative and quantitative data. I have been professionally involved in education at both K-12 and higher ed levels for 50 years. I know that continuous improvement is essential to maintaining quality education. This audit is about improvement for all students, regardless of learning challenges, cultural, psychological, physical, or social differences. I personally have been involved with many organizational assessments. Sometimes the client implements the recommendations, sometimes not. That will be up to you in the future. My mentor, Dr. Walter English, introduced me to the acronym WAFS, standing for Look Out for the Strengths. He always emphasized attention to the needs of students above all else. An equity audit is about identifying both our district's strengths and weaknesses. When we act with the best interests of students in mind, our education will be better, our children will thrive, and they will all receive the services they need and the equitable attention they deserve. Please have courage, consider the importance of continuous improvement, knowing that an audit will help us do that. When we act with our students' success in mind, we cannot go wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Casey Barnes, you're on deck.
Good evening, James Smith, Glendale Road, Hamden. I'd like to talk a little bit about procedure. Frankly, at the last meeting, I was a bit perplexed about the haphazard way in which a motion was brought forward to pursue an equity audit. I've served in large businesses, small businesses. I also served 12 years on the Hamden Board of Selectmen. And I've never seen something this consequential being done with such a trivial approach. I think it's the responsibility of this committee, if you're going to pursue an equity audit, to have 3 things. Number 1, a budget. Number 2, a budget item from which it's going to be withdrawn. And I understand the district doesn't have to get the budget from the town. They move money internally, that's fine. But there must be a budget item, and clearly defined goals and objectives. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to accomplish getting the equity audit done? Or are you going to accept the entire equity audit and all of the recommendations that go with it? I suggest that you divide it into 2. If you're going to do an equity audit, say, we're going to pursue it, we're going to learn what we don't know, and then we're going to have a second step, which will be a public discourse of the results of the audit, measured against the goals and objectives. They're the responsibility of the school committee to create and say, do these recommendations align with our goals and objectives? One other thing I want to talk about, Sean, how much time do I have left?
You have 1 minute left.
Okay, I want to talk about cost. I'm not a realtor, but I can drive by a house and say that house is a $200,000 house, that house is a $700,000 house. I may be off by 20, 30%, but I'm gonna be in the ballpark. So, based on my business knowledge and having worked in the town before, I'm gonna run an estimate of the cost here. $80,000, those are the two quotes we have. Okay, let's say they recommend new teaching materials, $50 a student, times 3,000 students, $150,000. Now we got to train our teachers overtime. Let's say 100 teachers trained, $1,000 extra pay for them to be trained. That's another $100,000. And then the cost of the audit people or the consultants to come in and do that. Let's say $20,000. That adds up to $350,000. Could be more, could be less, but I think it's a good ballpark number, and I think it's a number you ought to have in the back of your mind as you discuss this. Thank you very much.
2:30. Thanks, Jim.
Good evening, Tracy Farnsworth, 28 Red Bridge Road. It has come to my attention that a training is being offered to all Massachusetts school committees by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. The goal of this training is to help school committees prevent and work around discussions regarding equity audits and associated endeavors. The email sent on August 26th reads, Mask Learning Lunch Series, Managing Public Opposition to Critical Race Theory and Diversity/Equity/Inclusion Work. Friday, September 10th, 12 p.m. to 1:15 p.m. School committees across Massachusetts are coming under attack from groups falsely claiming that critical race theory, CRT, is being taught in K-12 schools, often as a way of protesting districts' work in anti-racism and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Join us for presentation and discussion about how to respond effectively to or get ahead of these attacks. Chris Horan, veteran K-12 public relations consultant, will share strategies for messaging and communication about these issues. A Mass school council attorney will also join the session and clarify district's obligations regarding Freedom of Information Act FOIA requests, open meeting law, and other legal challenges pertaining to CRT. My hope is that the school committee will not waste their time with this type of training. This training only serves to shut down open communications between schools and their community. At present, there are no goals or objectives that have been stated for this proposed equity audit. I encourage you to have open and honest dialogue with the public so that they understand what is being proposed. I would also encourage you not to vote on anything until there are codified goals, objectives, process, and cost. It is quite disheartening that when parents and community members interact and ask questions of schools and their committees, it is perceived and labeled as an attack. If you feel that you are being attacked, perhaps you might take a step back and look at how you are interacting with the community as elected officials.
10 seconds.
And just for the record, Cheryl, the curriculum subcommittee on August 19th, I don't recall any mention or discussion of a dashboard.
2:30.
Maybe it was
Thank you very much.
before or after.
Carolyn Brennan.
Thank you.
You're on deck.
Thank you, Tracy.
Carolyn, are you there? Yep. Okay, you're on deck. Thank you.
Good evening, Lisa Sternberg, 15 Mountain View Drive, Hamden. What's happening in my neighborhood is an influx of a lot of little kids. Today I was driving down our road and there were 5 little kids in one wagon. This evening on the way here, again, a little kid being pushed by a dad. I would like to be able to say with confidence to people who are asking me, how are the schools in Hamden? At this point, I don't really know. I'd like to know more. I don't think I should have to ask a parent, well, do you have any specific concerns? because it is possible that their child has special needs, that their child has some social emotional issues, that they're having a tough time economically, that they're running into any racial issues, even religious issues, anything that could interfere with their child getting the best opportunities for their education. And so I do strongly support the equity audit. I think we need to understand that children don't always get the same. They do get what they need, and that's what happens in an excellent public education system. Thank you.
I have the next person on deck. I'm sorry,
Sean, before you start that, can I ask for grace for 10-second extra grace? I need about 10 extra seconds at the end of it. I'm just asking.
Is Garvey, Garvey?
Okay. Sherry Gomez, you're on deck.
I'm going to talk as quickly as I
She just asked
can.
For 10 extra seconds and then
Just-
to the chair.
It's just, it was really hard to get everything in, but I'm talking as fast as I can. Just 10 extra seconds in case I go over, if you can just not stop me. I also wanted to ask if it's okay with you if I can take off my mask. I'm 2 weeks free of pneumonia, but I'm very short of breath. So if you don't mind, I can do that. Okay. Good evening. My name is Carolyn Brennan. I live at 22 Bungalow Point. I am a member of the Board of Selectmen, but I want to make it clear I'm not speaking on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. I'm here as a woman of faith, a mother, a nana, and an alumni of Minnetonka. My father was a farmer from the Midwest who migrated to New England to pursue his passion to be a professor in agriculture. Part of my father's career was spent as a consultant around the world to help build up self-sustaining agricultural opportunities for countries all over the world. We grew up in a home often filled with a variety of people from many nations and many different colors. My dad, we grew up appreciating the uniqueness of the diversity of mankind. So you can imagine my shock when my grandparents came to live with us to help my father raise us after my mother died. I brought my dearest friend home after school to hang out, and my grandfather stopped me at the door and wouldn't allow Herbie to come into the house because of the color of his skin. I was horrified. I had never seen or experienced racism before. I was 13 years old. My heart broke. I had never seen my father show this behavior, and he was raised by my grandparents. You see, my father made a decision to break that horrific prejudice. He understood the value all humans have, regardless of the color of the skin. He broke that generational sin. He wasn't, I am not, and my children are not responsible for my grandfather's racism, which is why I'm here today. Equity audits, as we know, will lead to embracing critical race theory. As a Christian, I place my identity, my core identity in Christ, not in my skin color or others. According to Psalm 139, God created all of our inward parts. He knit us together in our mother's womb. We are remarkably and wonderfully made. All of us here are remarkably and wonderfully made. Every single life is valuable and should be treated as such in schools and outside of schools. Why don't we spend our time and effort bringing students together and celebrating their diversity instead of creating a politically charged plan to further isolate racial groups? Our students are not oppressors. Our students are not offenders. Our young people are just trying to get through life so that they can one day become contributing members of society. The bottom line is racism is a heart issue and not an academic one. Let's focus on the good in each person and leave politics out of education. Let the parents parent, please, and let the teachers teach. And let's not try to eradicate racism with more racism.
Broderick, you're on deck.
Good evening. I didn't realize I signed up to speak, so here I am.
Thank you.
My name is Sherry Gomez. I live at 25 Grassy Meadow Road. I have 3 children who are currently not enrolled in the district as of a choice made by our family this year. I do support the equity audit. I have not I tried to stay focused on not looking at the political aspect, though I think we need to address the concerns of the citizens who are speaking up in opposition for it. So my question is, I guess, what are people afraid of? What are we afraid of? If we're truly here for all students, we need to just look at all students. I know we come across the colorblind statement all the time, and I was given the same statement in this district. Oh, sorry. So, in this district, about I don't see color when I look at your name. But if you didn't see color, my child wouldn't have been placed in ELL for 3 years. Let me rephrase that, 3 years. 3 years that the identified classroom, how we set these up. Was I asked, was he racially profiled? I was like, I don't know, I'm asking the question. So it can happen, those things, race, right? The other issue I look at is how are we treating all students? Needs. Everyone has needs that have changed over the last 18 months, right? My family's needs have changed drastically. If we do this equity audit, I agree with a lot of points that everyone made. We need to have a process. We need to make sure that we look at the cost. We also need to make sure that we have to come back and have a discussion, I think, as a whole community. Because the only way we're going to move forward is if we move forward together. And I know it's hard to all come together, but I think we should try. Because I'm sitting here not realizing I'm speaking tonight, and I'm thinking about the 3 kids I have at home who are biracial. I'm not. I'm white. I'm a first-generation college graduate from a working class family, and I worked my way here. I didn't get handed anything. So as I sit here, I think the equity audit can do a couple things. It can open our eyes to the areas and gaps that we have. It can also acknowledge the strengths as a district we have. We have people who are here wanting to have a discussion. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in education and no one shows up. So let's listen to the people, even if we don't disagree, but try to come together and move forward. When we know better, we do better. And I think we can do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, President, you're on deck.
Hey, Sean. All set? Yeah, John Broderick, 1220 Stony Hill Road, Wilbraham, Mass. 22-year resident, and I had 2 girls that went through the district. Some things I'm going to repeat from a couple months ago. Thank you all for being here. Members of the school committee, administrative people here, have a lot of trust in you and a lot of respect in you, all of you. I appreciate the job that you do for all the kids. Get the strategic plan and the equity audit done as soon as possible. It will benefit the kids the sooner you get it done. I know you got the strategic plan rolling. I would have liked to seen maybe a different rollout of the equity audit at the same time or even before, but that's water under the bridge. An equity, I'm going to go through some random thoughts here until I run out of time, but you know, an equity audit is not just about race. People keep forgetting that. I think a lot of people on the opposition misunderstand what this really is. An equity audit is not curriculum. It's not critical race theory. Critical race theory is not culturally responsive teaching. Culturally responsive teaching actually increases achievement and engagement by students. I actually got that from one of the new websites opposing the equity audit, which is kind of ironic. The ones with all the misinformation. This is not a political issue. It's been made a political issue. As far as the petitions, 62% by my last count were in favor of you performing the equity audit. Of the people that, of the total people that responded to those petitions, 740, 62% in favor and 38% on the no petition. That's a pretty big margin. Tonight, oppositions and Pro, it's running pretty close. I think I just made it 7-7 by my count. So I like to keep score. I'm a numbers guy. It's not expensive. It's about $25 or $30 per student in the district. I think I'm preaching to the choir, to the 7 of you, because I think you've all made up your minds. And I think you know the facts versus the misinformation and the spin that's out there. And if I didn't say this before, thank you to the 90% of the people behind me that came tonight with masks on. To the 10% that opted not to, I don't know. I actually got a text from somebody during the meeting that's at home on Zoom because there are people here without masks on. And I was told that that came directly from 2 of you. I'm not going to point you out, but the mask would not be enforced. So thanks, everybody. Yep.
Tom Hidalgo, you're next.
Good evening, Tara Kozub, 6 Beechwood Drive. As members of the school committee, you are the gatekeepers of our district's core values, among them being the belief that educational excellence is achievable in relation to individual potential, and every individual is capable of learning and deserving of respect. You are the gatekeepers of our district's tradition of educational excellence and high levels of achievement and accomplishments in academics, athletics, community service, and the arts. With that in mind, tonight I ask you to respectfully reconsider allowing an equity audit to pass through the gates of this district. Why? As the saying goes, a tree is known by its fruit, a man by his deeds. A wise person examines the fruit of a deed before imitating it. Here's an example of the fruit of East Long Meadow's equity audit, a forwarded email sent to me by a concerned educator from that district. And she writes, EL completed an equity audit, so now we are going to be trained in CRT. This is a workshop that we can attend to get a jump start if you click on the link. So I followed the links. And among the topics covered were anti-racist teaching in the context of critical race theory backlash. There were links to many disturbing resources, including an art gallery showcasing the following posters: Ready for the Fight for Indigenous Sovereignty, Racial, Gender, Reproductive, Environmental, and Migrant Justice, Sex Worker, and Animal Rights. Sorry. Also, we will build in the name of communism and anarchy. There was an article, White Supremacy Culture is Poisoning Your Children. So here's the fruit of Long Meadow's equity audit, a list of recommended resources for children and parents taken from their website. Mama Ella Has a Penis, How to Talk to Your Children About Gender Identity. Number 2, talking with your children about racism, police brutality, and protests. Number 3, an article entitled No White Saviors, kids' books about Black women in the US history that states our kids are racist and so are we. All these resources entered into the school committee gates of the East Long Meadow districts through a modern day Trojan horse known as the equity audit. An equity audit will not foster excellence or equal opportunity for all students. As the recommended resource from East Long Meadow tells us, it's 3 steps. Agitate, educate, and organize. Tonight, I respectfully ask you to please be the gatekeepers the children of the HWRSD need and deserve. Say no to the equity audit. Thank you. And I have links
Mr. Gordon, you're on deck.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Tom Hidalgo. I'm at 109 Cherry Drive in Wilbraham. I'm retired from the Department of Education. I have no children in the school system, but I support the equity audit because it's good for the schools, and what's good for the schools is good for the community. An equity audit is a tool we can use to gather information, to identify potential inequities in schools, to help us create a more fair, inclusive educational environment where all children are affirmed and have all the opportunities they deserve to excel in school. An equity audit will not hurt anyone. It's not going to take anything away from anyone. It's designed to remove barriers to prevent some students from succeeding. It really pains me to see people getting so exercised about an equity audit because most of the opposition has absolutely nothing to do with an equity audit, or what it is. Absolutely nothing. I've heard just about everything, but one thing I haven't heard tonight, that if you support an equity audit, you're like George Wallace. You know who George Wallace was? you support an equity audit, you're like George Wallace. That's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. Thank you.
Dagmar, Jim, you're on deck.
Good evening. My name is Pat Gordon, 20 Glen Drive, Wilbraham. I would like to address the following. The role of the school committee members regarding policy versus politics. As stated in the MASC Charting the Course program, which all school committee members should take, policy is clearly stated and based on Massachusetts general laws, chapter and verse. There is no Massachusetts general law, which I am aware of, which states that we must abide by this so-called equity audit. We do not have that policy written in our district or handbook. As for audit, which is another role of the school committee, it is meant to as a budgetary audit tool, dealing with numbers and never with political issues, trying to be passed without the policy already written and addressed in Massachusetts general laws. This also affects curriculum, which is another role of the school committee. But if there is no policy governing it based on MGLS, then the curriculum forwarding this political agenda is nothing more than politics and is, in my opinion, illegal to be included in the public school arena. I am only interested in what our district does regarding this matter and not what other school committees do. If they are willing to jump off this cliff, it doesn't mean that we need to also. My personal investment in this district. We have been a resident for 36 years in Wilbraham. I have been a teacher in Hwrsd for 38 years. I had 2 children graduate from this district, and now we are educating a first grader and a first grader? Yeah, a first grader and a second grader. And I also want to tell Mr. Ganem, you did a wonderful job in the remote learning district. And I speak for myself as a grandmother. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Bill Fogarty, you're on deck.
Can I get 10 extra seconds? Yeah. I wanted to let the 2 of you know that Lillian DeGrande sent you a video she had asked to be played in an email. I wasn't going to speak today because you have. Oh.
Just state your name and where you live.
Thank you. Dagmar Meacham. There's a mic now, huh? I don't have to yell as much. Wilbraham, Mountain Road. I wasn't going to speak today because you've all heard from me more than enough. But something happened this week that really kind of bugged me, and I thought I would share it. My son started 9th grade, and he's in Hwrsd, and on the first day of school, he was sat in the back of the classroom, and he was asked to copy from the board. Now, for most kids, this wouldn't be an issue, but my son is dysgraphic, very dysgraphic. And if you don't know, that's a disability of written expression. Through his IEP testing, he has above average intelligence. His spelling is atrocious. His handwriting is illegible. He can't form sentences very well. So he uses a lot of tools to help him, but copying from the board is especially difficult for him. So because I'm very involved, I emailed the teacher right away, tried to very kindly say he needs these accommodations, and the teacher was very good. The teacher wrote back right away, I will change it. So this isn't a criticism of the teacher. This is a criticism of the structure and procedures that are in place that allowed for this to happen. I was told that the teachers don't get the IEPs for the first week of school. For some kids, that may not be an issue. For my kid on his first day of 9th grade in a new building, to not have the support structures in place right from the start, it hurts his self-esteem and it starts him on the wrong foot. And these are the types of inequities that an equity audit could come back with to help these students. In the district I work in, I can access all of my students' IEPs before they're in front of me in class to know how to best support them. And then I wondered how many students went to school that first day and had the same experience as him. How many of them started their very first day of high school off on the wrong foot? How many of them went home and actually told their parents? How many parents actually emailed back and said, hey, this is what my kid needs? How many of them just had their first week ruined? How many are still sitting in the wrong seat, still not getting the accommodations? When you look at the data on the accountability portal, a student with an IEP has at 13.6% of students with IEPs end up completing an AP class, advanced placement, which still exists in this district, and others, of course. I want to know what chances my kid has of ending up in an advanced placement class when he has above average intelligence, or is he going to be one of the other ones that never gets to? And longitudinal data from Amherst Pelham Regional has shown growth for all student populations.
Bill's the last one. Before I'm sorry, excuse me, Bill. Did anyone else want to sign up for public comment that did not have the opportunity? Okay, thank you. So Bill, you're our final.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bill Fogarty. I live at 6 Old Coach Road in Wilbraham. I've had 2 children go through the school system here from kindergarten through high school. I support the equity audit for 2 main reasons. One, as Dagmar just discussed, it's going to help us help all children. And that means it's going to lower dropout rates, increase graduation rates, and improve academic achievement, which are the way a district is judged. And when we're helping all students, that's what's going to impact all of those factors. The other thing I think we need to focus on is what our children are doing after they leave Minnechaug. They are going out into an increasingly diverse world where they'll be working with, and in many cases, working for people who are very different than they are. If you've been involved in supervising and managing people, you may have seen a lot of instances where young careers are really hurt because people have said and done things that have been disrespectful to someone who is different than they are. It has resulted in a formal complaint, sometimes even a lawsuit. It's miserable for everyone involved. And it can really hurt your career if you do that. The reason I bring this up is an equity audit not only impacts practices in the schools, it sends a message to students about respecting and appreciating diversity. And I think we give such a wonderful tool to our students as they're going out into the world if we're showing them that we really value diversity and not only just tolerating it, but appreciating it and respecting it. That gives them something that really is going to help them in their careers as they go out into an increasingly diverse world. So I think it's very important that we move forward with the equity audit, and I urge the committee to support it.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Yes, sorry. So that concludes public comment. Thank you, everybody. So moving on to unfinished business.
I'd like to make a motion to instruct the superintendent to proceed with hiring a company to begin an equity audit during the 2022-2023 school year with integration of the findings into the strategic plan by the end of 2023.
May I trouble you and ask you to read that again?
Sure. To instruct the superintendent to proceed with hiring a company to begin an equity audit during the 2022-2023 school year with integration of the findings into the strategic plan by the end of 2023. The year 2023. No, so having the audit will be done during the school year 2022 to 2023. And then we have the rest of 2023 to have it integrated into the strategic plan, but having a hard date by the end of 2023 to have it integrated into the strategic plan. Do you need the text of that, Erin, or do you have it?
No, I have that.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we don't, it's not public comment, no questions are allowed at this time.
So Michelle, I just.
We would need a second in order to have discussion.
I second.
Thank you, Charlie.
So Michelle, if I could just ask you, and I provided Michelle what the motion read last time, I think people just might want to hear what that was that we voted on. And that might just be clarity, if we could, just so you.
Okay, so the original motion that was made to support the superintendent's efforts to gather information on an equity audit. So discussion.
We had a lot of people come up here today on both sides. And in conversations that I've had, and I was willing to meet with anyone who wanted to meet with me, and I met with everyone that asked. And it seems that the people who are against the audit are not necessarily against the audit, but against how the audit's interpreted. Like, for example, if you read the Long Meadow, East Long Meadow version, there's nothing about critical race theory, but then there are some things that people find inflammatory in the results from that audit. So we were talking about what if we had it so that the audit would be done and then it would be integrated into the strategic plan with the people who've been working on the strategic plan, with Mars and everyone in the community, so that everyone would have a say into, how the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So I thought that by having the audit after the strategic plan would be done and having them keep placeholders. I talked to Mars and they said they would do that. And then with the findings that we have from the audit, we would have time, the summer and the whole next fall, to sit and work on how we would integrate that into the plan. I thought that would allay some fears of some people, as they would have say into, what would come out of that. That is why it was worded the way it was.
Is that why there's so much time between now and the equity audit would actually begin?
Yeah, because when I was talking to Mars, they said that though, we are a nice sized district, but the administration is fairly small compared to other districts. So he thought that if we were to do the equity audit at the same time as doing the strategic plan, it would dilute both of them. So we thought that we've already started it, and we will finish this equity audit by the end of this school year. The strategic plan will be done by the end of this school year. And then we would have the next school year to do the equity audit, and then time after that to integrate them together. So it would not be diluting either.
Did Lars think that was in the first time or just right or scarcely?
I did not go over the exact time with him, but this was based on our conversation where he thought that, you know, it would, they would have a plan for us, you know, at the end of this school year. And then the next school year would be for the equity audit, and then there would be time to integrate.
So is there a reason why you're not interested in trying to consider an internal audit to start and then seeing what those findings would have been? And then determine if we should bring an agency in?
We have had many years to do an internal audit, and an internal audit's never been done. It's never been a part of any goals that the superintendent has brought forth, and he's yeah, it's just, it's not something that that they had said that they would be willing to do, or was ever something that was ever done before.
We also haven't done a strategic plan in 20 years. So you have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, but we signed that on 3 years ago.
Sorry,
we signed on for that 3 years ago.
but I think we know why we did.
Yeah.
Keep moving forward on it. So I don't think it's fair to put it on the superintendent to say, well, he never asked, or, you know, he never said he wanted to do that. I mean, I think people know, I'm not going to take up too much time, but I think there's a couple of things that I really want to say. First of all is, you know, what we talked about at the beginning of this meeting, I really hold to be true, and that is that we spend way too much time telling you what to do. I mean, we really do. We're supposed to hire and evaluate the superintendent. We're not supposed to micromanage him. We're not supposed to tell him what to do. I think the directive that we gave him last time, which was to have him begin the process of investigating firms to do an equity audit, I think is entirely appropriate. I also think that putting an equity audit into the strategic plan, so long as that is the recommendation of the strategic plan, is also the correct way to do it. The reason why is because we talked about the political nature of this. You know, going back to, you know, in my 6 years, we were basically looking at, you know, the Common Core was sort of the last thing that really energized people from a political perspective. And I think it's a horrible, horrible idea to let this originate as a directive from the school committee. I just think I think it's just politically charged, and no matter what's going to happen, at the end of the day, it's going to be looked at as a political decision rather than a decision made in the best interests of the students. I would strongly urge us to reword it something to the effect of pending a recommendation from the school committee through the equity audit. So we can begin. I'm sorry?
Did you mean the strategic plan?
The strategic, I'm sorry, through the strategic plan, I'm sorry. Pending a recommendation from the superintendent through the strategic plan. I just think it's a, you know, school committees have 3 enumerated responsibilities in the district. Policy, hire and evaluate the superintendent, and set the budget. That's it. And for those who are students of history in the state of Massachusetts, you will learn that those enumerated responsibilities of the school committee are deliberate. It's not a haphazard arrangement of responsibilities. And those responsibilities go all the way back to the Massachusetts Education Reform Act of 1993, which is where it was recognized in the state of Massachusetts that politically motivated school committees had far too much influence and authority over the decisions that were made in the day-to-day operations of the district. And it led to the demise of many school districts throughout the state. I've said it on my campaigns, I say it now. Don't let politics infect the school system and the education. Please, let's let the superintendent do the job that he was hired to do. Let's not cloud the issue by bringing a political process into the educational system. Let's make it work for everybody. The easiest way to do that is to bring the strategic planning committee together, have people working on a strategic plan, find a way to implement it. But to direct him to do it, I just think it's the wrong way to go, and I don't think the results are going to end up the way we want it to. And I won't say anything else.
We might have to repeat what you said before.
I'm sorry.
You might have to repeat.
I
what
know,
you said
yeah.
at the beginning.
Sorry.
Just keep it there.
I must say, I don't I don't see it as politics. Having had 3 children who were learning disabled and have had a really hard time.
Sir, you're out of order.
Had a really hard time getting through the school systems. I don't see it as politics. I see it as, and I see every year, I see from this vantage point, children who have a really hard time making it in our school system. I see it as a leg up. I see it as a way of seeing.
Sir, excuse me, you're out of order.
So to Bill's point, I believe that the superintendent has made a move to start a strategic plan. And we started that and we're going forward with it. I believe that Mars came in and said that they are not equipped to do an equity audit. They believe an equity audit should be done. I believe that Mars then clarified that and said, don't do it in parallel, but do it one after the other. And I can live with all of that, although I'd like things to go a little faster, I can live with that. I cannot agree with, I forget who said it out in the public comment, but this isn't policy. It is policy. I wish I had paper on it, but it is JBI something about having equity audits. It is in our policy manuals. You can look it up. And I believe that this is the time to start looking at how we bring everybody on board. Give them equal access.
There was a gentleman today that was talking about changing the spark plugs rather than getting a whole engine. And the first thing I think everyone knows is when you bring your car in, whether it's an oil change or whatever, the first thing they do is they plug it in and they do a diagnostic or an audit to see what is going on with your car, what reports are coming up. And then based on that, that's what they do. There's certain recommended things that they do, but they come to me and they say, hey, listen, you have a problem. This is what we found when we're looking at the computer inside of your car. So without the information, how can we know what issues that we have unless we do that audit to see where we stand?
Cheryl, I believe you're referencing policy JBB under educational equity. Policy JBB does not mention an equity audit anywhere. What it does say, and I think they're very important, educational equity for the purpose of this policy is defined as providing all students as reasonably practical the high quality instruction and support they need to reach and exceed common standards. It ends with the superintendent shall include equity practices in the district's strategic plan and goal strategies to implement this policy. The superintendent, upon request, will periodically report to the committee the progress of the implementation of this policy. If we look at the audit that we have from July 20th from Melanson, during the course of our fiscal year 2020 audit, we identified certain areas where improvements and/or efficiencies could be made. Number one, currently only the operating budget is mentioned in the school committee minutes when adopting the annual budget. We recommend that the capital budget also be included in the school committee minutes when adopting the annual budget. We then heard Aaron today respond with a management plan, and some of them he disagreed with and said we are not going to do that. There shouldn't be anything to fear from an equity audit. I coach with someone, and I apologize for the language, but he always says, be brave enough to suck. And so it's important in any audit to recognize where do we have room for improvement, but the implementation of that comes to the district. And we heard, I think it was Jim and Sherry who both mentioned it. It is clear this is a lightning rod issue. It is clear that if an audit occurs, there absolutely should be some type of forum where as a community, we can understand what the recommendations are and then take whatever action we may choose to make. That being said, it is not our role to vote for an audit. It is not our role to tell the superintendent what to do. It is a clear system of checks and balances. So the checks and balances there are through the mid-year review and through the final review. And our checks and balances are through these people right here. And so at the end of the day, I would encourage us that process matters and that we should let Al and let the district choose how they will proceed in this manner and hold accountable. And we will be held accountable. And that's very fair.
In response to that, I don't disagree with you saying, but I know that Al did check with Mars. Mars is the body that Al picked to help do the strategic plan. He's going along with their recommendations, and they recommended, not in parallel, but in subsequent, to have an equity audit. They said it right out at the front. In one of our trainings, they said an equity audit was a very good to use in one of their slides. And then they said, but we are not equipped to do that kind of an audit. But the next piece of paper, the next memo he gave us said, if you do an equity audit, we should not do it running parallel. It's too much. Do it, like you said, sometime in between. Future plan in place and then do the equity audit.
That's absolutely a mischaracterization of what happened, and I think everybody in this room knows that. The slide that was presented by Mars when Matt came to give the presentation offered basically 4 different options that might be used theoretically in a strategic plan. Those were not his recommendations. They were theoretical recommendations, of which one was the strategic plan. We even got him back at the next meeting to talk about that and to tell him that there was some confusion as to where they thought the strategic plan should fit in. And he was very clear in telling us that he felt that if a strategic plan was to be done, that it would be embedded as part of, as an equity audit was going to be done, it would be embedded as part of the strategic plan. And he said, we don't do that. So if you guys want to look, if you guys feel that it's appropriate to do as part of your strategic plan, when we get to that point, we'll need you guys to either find somebody or to do something in-house. But it was never something that they said, you guys need this. And that needs to be made crystal clear. They did not come in and tell us this. They hadn't even started the strategic planning process yet. We were still looking at just the process of how the strategic plan was going to work.
Sure. So you need to just appreciate that Mars has not made any recommendations to me at all so far. We've had that first initial meeting with them. They had a SWOT analysis done with all my administrators. And I actually left that room at that time so that my principals, my assistant principals, directors could work with Mars. So haven't made any recommendations to me so far. It's a process they're going through. When they've completed absolutely everything and have, public forums and have done their work with the community, then they'll give us recommendations. At this point, I have not had any in-depth conversation about what they recommend based on information they're receiving from the community.
So again, to go back to the motion doesn't say which company he has to do, what the audit has to be about. It's saying that we want an audit that's done. We're leaving the rest up to the superintendent. And we're saying that the findings should be integrated into the strategic plan, like with that thing before. We want to do this, we don't want to do this, we want to do that, and it will be done through the strategic plan. So I think that this is a policy that we're saying we're instructing, we want the audit done, and we put a timetable on it, as we all talk about SMART goals, and we're leaving the rest up to the superintendent.
And I think, Alan, you and I and Tina interviewed people. It was totally, and we interviewed companies whose representatives came up. It's totally up to you. You feel is the best match for doing the exercise. I didn't get a sense of that you were opposed to looking at the companies and seeing what would be a good match. We went through months in the curriculum meetings talking about that.
So I'm not opposed, and I think the last motion you guys gave me said to stop doing some of this work. I don't have the exact verbiage in front, Right now, my focus right now is, as a community, is doing the strategic plan. I think from what we're seeing here tonight and what we're hearing, an equity audit is certainly going to come out of it. There's not a question in my mind. How could that not be a conversation that will be involved when we do community forums? But right now, my main focus as a district, and as a community, is getting our strategic plan. We haven't had one. And that's where I'm putting our energies at this point.
Do you feel that the timeline that was mentioned in this motion is a good timeline for you to into that?
Yeah.
Because we're looking at 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough, respectful, that's a tough question. I mean, I have my 7 bosses sitting in front of me in my community. I mean, if you're telling me that this is a timeline you want me to do, you know, I'm certainly gonna do it. My focus right now, and I can't stress this enough, is getting the strategic plan off the ground. I don't even know what it's gonna look like when they've done their work. And so I wanna see what that is, and that's the focus of where I wanna go. Do I think an equity audit is something that we need to be looking at and doing? Yes. Right now, unless school committee tells me differently, my focus is primarily on the strategic plan and getting this worked out. Never mind opening up and running a school district and doing everything else that needs to be done as well.
So the way the motion's written, you have this, you know, the timeframe of the strategic plan is in there. The strategic plan, it's going to be finished at the end of this school year. And like you said, there's not a question in your mind that an equity audit will be needed to be done. So I don't see what the issue is here. I think we've given ample time for the audits to be done and ample time for it to be integrated. But if something happens, you can always come back and say, for some reason, the time's not working out, and we can figure out if it has to be edited.
The real work, ladies and gentlemen, is after the strategic plan is done, right? Then that's the work I gotta do, and that's what we gotta do, and everybody in this community's gotta do. They're gonna come with us, and they're gonna give us these recommendations, they'll work with our community. The real work's gonna start after they give us the work, and if we decide as a strategic plan, what our final plan is gonna be, that's when we're gonna have to really put in.
So to your point, though, you just said that if he comes back, say in January, that he's not gonna have time to start at, say, February, March, that we'll reevaluate, we'll be in the same position. So is it fair to start that now?
Well, he would have to say why
But
he
if
wasn't
we,
able to meet the
if we
deadline
were
and
to
stuff like that.
create to what we had initially started to support him in the endeavor to look for an agency and to just start that investigation. We
That's not what the
learned,
audit, that's not what the
excuse me, I'm
motion
speaking.
was.
Can you wait till I'm done,
Sure.
please? We last year learned that the state had changed how they were going to accredit people to do them. That came from our business manager. I'm sorry, is that the right term?
Director of Finance.
Director of Finance, sorry. But he had said to us that the state had, the Commonwealth of Mass basically said they were gonna negate some of the people who were accredited, so they could do a full review and come bring forward a new, might be a new group, or making sure that the people that were performing the equity audits were actually doing what they were saying they were supposed to be doing. And so we had kind of decided that, well, you know, we should see what they come out with for the objectives of these people, what they're gonna offer. And I think that if the state is saying they're gonna put people on hold, I'm all for doing equity audit. I mean, I come from Hamden. We've been the underdog for a long time. And not just because we're from Hamden, but people are treated differently. They're offered things differently. That's been a bone of contention for years. So I'm not opposed to sticking with what we had originally voted for, to say we would support the superintendent in that. He would take that direction. He would lead that. We can ask him to provide an update as to where he thinks he could be with that in a year. But now you're signing him up for something this year that he may not be able to do until a year from now or 2 years from now. And I mean, would you still be on the committee? Knock on wood, hopefully you would be, but you never know.
So a couple things. Number one is, why do we have policy? If we have a written policy, why are we going to have a written policy if we're not going to follow it? Right? It kind of makes it pointless, right? So all those policy subcommittee meetings that we go to, we set up a policy, but then we don't follow it. The other thing is with regards to Sean's motion, I mean, the only thing I can say is that the 7 of us are his bosses. As Patrick said, all you folks out there are our bosses. The superintendent has sat here before us and told us that he cannot see a way that you would go through a strategic planning process without doing some sort of equity audit. Why do we feel it necessary to violate our own policy and direct him to do something that he has already done and to put a timeline on it if he's not sure he's going to be able to meet that timeline? Because it sounds to me like we're just setting you up for a catch-22. I would go back to my original. I would get rid of this motion. I mean, we have his written statement, or his spoken word here, that that's what he's planning on doing. Why are we muddying the waters with this? Obviously, this is an issue that is vitally important to the members of this community. He's not going to want to mess this up. We have to start trusting our superintendent to do the job that he's been hired to do, and to trust us to be able to follow up on our mid-year review and our final review to make sure that he's doing what it is that he was hired to do.
I just want to say one thing, and it goes sort of along with the statement earlier from school committee members as well too. I'm gonna go slow to move fast, right? I'm gonna make sure I do things right. Last year at this time, I got a lot of pressure, like, why are we behind? Why are we behind? Why are we doing this in terms of remote education, hybrid education? Just bear with me, give me the chance to do it right. And I think you've heard from many people in this community that we did it right. We're one of the leading communities in this area, the way we did our hybrid education. There's a lot of push to even do hybrid education right now. Like, let's move. I want to make sure we're going to do this right. And I'm going to say the same thing with the strategic plan and the equity audit. I want to do it right. And so you just got to, sometimes you have to go slow to move fast. And I just want to make sure that we're going to do it the right way, not just rush to hire a company to come in here and check the box and say, yep, we did an equity audit, like some communities do. I just want to make sure we're doing the things the right way and not getting too involved that we can't get the work done. It's the real work afterwards that's we're going to have to do with the district. So I just want you to appreciate that. I think you know me well enough by now that trust me in the work that we're going to do, like I said in the past, and what we'll do in the future, we'll do it the right way.
Yeah, I don't think this is putting a rush on it. I think you have this year to do the strategic plan, that's what the goal is, to have it done by the end of this year. And then for the 2022-2023 year, that whole school year to do the equity audit, and the time after to integrate it. I think that's totally doable in every conversation I've had with Mars, with you, with yourself, and what I know about equity audits and the timeframes that other districts have gone through. Slow to move fast. It's good. Now, you actually didn't say you're going to do one. You actually said it's not a question in your mind that the focus will be on, in the strategic plan of doing an equity audit. So.
Have you done a strategic plan? Have you done an equity audit? Do you know how much time goes into some of those things?
No,
I mean, I know you've probably managed projects in your professional life, and you realize all the things that come into play with that. And so nobody could have planned COVID. We don't really even know what the fall is going to look like for us and what other road or speed bumps he's going to face over the next couple of months. So is it fair to try to push him and expect that because to you think it's going to be easy, that it's going to be easy for he and his team when they have all of these moving Tetris pieces? I'm just saying, I think we need to be more realistic about the timeline, how long it takes to get some of these things through. The Department of Education is always throwing curveballs with coming out with new updates the last minute that doesn't even give him time to plan for.
Yeah, where are you going on vacation in 2 years? Fair question. That's
New Hampshire.
Yeah.
We're going to the beach.
Yeah, because I haven't had one this past 2 years, so that's okay. I want to talk about rolling over my vacation days.
Al, what union contract are we hoping to have in 2 years? You have that planned, or hopefully we will have that planned, correct? We don't do it this line of questions. Chair, every 3 years, yeah. We do it every year, yeah, every 3 years.
But there is a legal obligation to do that union contract every 3 years. Whereas with what we're asking to do is we don't want to bind you to a timeline. I feel it's a very dangerous thing. And again, what happens if you get under the gun, you start rushing it, you miss things. And so to Mara's point, it's pretty interesting. I was just thinking about this with doing an equity audit, like as part of the strategic plan, the way I see it is I see basically an internal audit happening organically within the strategic planning committee. And from there, being able to, if you feel the need to bring in an outside agency to provide them with guidance as far as what areas really, you guys can do a sweep, but what areas we want to look at. And it's very interesting you say that, because how many equity audit companies will come into this district and know anything about the Hamden Wilbraham thing? So how are we going to, we're talking about getting data, but I mean, just getting a truckload of data and dumping it on our doorstep doesn't give us nearly as much information as if we're providing, good diagnostic testing to be able to look for areas of inequity and areas that we're concerned about, and also give them a little bit of a spreadsheet. When I order tests to diagnose things for patients, I mean, I don't just, check off every box on the lab sheet and hand it to the lab and say, go get 14 vials of blood drawn. You start off looking at the areas that you need work, but you also begin looking at other areas as well. You let the process begin organically, synthetically in the district. Let the members of the community really be part of that process. And then if you need to open it up to an outside agency, you can.
I gotta say one last thing. So this is, just my final thought is, this is my 34th year as an educator. So I'm showing my age right now. I have never done a strategic plan. So in all my years, I had a strategic plan in place, and I picked it up and made it and modified it, moved it along. I've never started a strategic plan from scratch. So I don't know what to expect, to be honest with you. I don't know what this is gonna look like. I don't know what's gonna come out of these community forums, what's gonna take place. So that's why I'm a little hesitant in seeing where we're gonna go with this. So I hate to be committed to a time frame, because I just wanna make sure I'm gonna do this the right way.
But unlike most things, you have the current strategic plan as a backbone to kind of see, you can compare it to that. I'm not saying it's gonna be the exact same thing, but you can be looking at something and kind of gauge back at that to see what that said. Because it did work for a long time. It clearly there's something that's not working right now, but that's where you can see the growth of what changed between what you're identifying now and what they have.
But respectfully,
20 years
it's
ago.
22 years old now.
Yeah, but-
So it's a little antiquated, and
Yeah.
so there's certain pieces I look at, but I gotta be honest with you, I haven't looked at that in a long time, because I just don't feel like it's relevant to where we're at now.
We've had some kids come in and speak here. We had Maya a couple of years ago. We had Marisa come. We had some of the kids this past year come and speak. And so I've heard it from students, issues with bullying, with race, stuff like that. But I don't think I've heard enough or anything really from the administration on, what is going on, what are we finding in our district, stuff like that. I've just never heard that from that side before. And I know you have a lot going on and stuff. That's why I thought that something like this might be good to help you see, maybe or help us see what's going on in the district.
I think if the timeline was further out, I think it would get lost. I think every educator in our district, nothing's changed since I was an educator in our district. Every educator has a year to 2 year timeline for their goals. I believe your goals are being changed to 2 years out, which really actually gives you a bullseye for what Sean's for the start, working on the equity audit after having completed the strategic plan. So you'll have your strategic plan, you'll have your goals from your strategic plan, you'll start getting data from your strategic plan, and you'll still have a year left to start the equity audit and go from there.
Respectfully, if this is the timeline you guys want, I think you know me well enough by now, I'll get it done,
So that's the issue to me right there. If this is the timeline you want, it can't be ours. An equity audit is not a policy, and it's what was called earlier. It's not. It's a tool under the umbrella of diversity and inclusion. That's a tool that someone can use to assess. If I were sitting in Al's shoes, we've got, I think John said 700 plus people that signed one way or another. Clearly, this is a hot button issue. If it was me, I'd probably run real quick to figure out, all right, what's going on? How are we addressing in individual schools? But it's not our role to say, here's your timeline, here's what you're going to do. The question, the statement was made that we're declining. We are, because we don't understand roles and responsibilities. And until we understand that, we're going to continue down this road. Because while we're worrying about it, you brought up help me
I
out.
brought up a lot of stuff.
No. Curriculum, political issue 5 years ago or so. Common Core.
Common Core.
So while Common Core was being argued, we were doing things like cutting some of the middle school Spanish positions. We were removing STEM. Those are the things that matter. Those are the things that we should focus on. But instead we focus on everything else but student achievement.
We went back to the.
And let's leave it to Al to say, this is an issue. Let me figure out what we can do and go address it.
We went back to the junior high. During that fight, we abandoned the middle school model and went back to the junior high model. That was my first year. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And I will shut up after this, I promise. We spent an inordinate amount of time, way too much time, telling him how to do his job. It clearly is not our responsibility. It clearly is written in our own policy that it is up to the superintendent to implement strategies within the district in order to deal with issues of diversity, inclusion, and equity.
But it's our job to evaluate. And so the question I would ask, and we heard it from the students that came, I think it was in April, that they wish there were teachers that looked like them. And in our goals, recruiting and retaining a diverse teacher workforce so as to increase the number of teachers of color in our district. This summer, we've hired 2 principals, we've hired 3 assistant principals, we've hired a nurse leader, we've hired a curriculum director. What, if anything, did we do to recruit a diverse workforce? Doesn't necessarily mean that that's who's hired, but recruit it. That would be, to me, our role is to ask that question, but not say, you need to recruit and you need to hire a diverse workforce. And I think that's the nuance that we're dealing with here. And would really just encourage us to support Al's efforts and let Al lead our district and let us be the oversight body that we are meant to be.
I believe anything that we do here and that we have Al do, it's all about time. When we do the evaluations, when he has to have his artifacts for us and stuff like that, it's all about timelines. Timelines ensures things get done in a certain way. I was very generous, I thought, with this timeline, taking into account everything that everyone was saying. I stand by the time frame in here. I think it is plenty of time and generous. If for some reason that turns out not to be the case, you can come back and let us know what's going on and why you can't do it in 2.5 years. And I don't think any decline, and by the way, how do we know what the decline is? We still don't even have a metric to see how good we're doing in the district. And I've been talking about this for 5 years, about why don't we have a formula that says, here's how good we're doing compared to other years. So we've been talking about stuff, we've been asking stuff, and I think sometimes you have to instruct. Okay. So you said you weren't going to talk. I don't make a motion. I don't think you need to make the motion. You can just do it.
So you will learn.
Should I read the motion
Yeah,
again?
read the motion
Yeah, the
again.
motion again. To instruct the superintendent to proceed with hiring a company to begin an equity audit during the 2022-2023 school year with integration of the findings into the strategic plan by the end of the year 2023.
Already got that. I already got that. You guys ready?
No. Sure.
No.
Sean?
Aye.
Lisa? Aye. Travis?
No.
Michelle? Aye. So
Passes.
passes 4-3.
4-3.
I just want to, I remember a very lofty goal we had 2 years ago, in which we were trying to get kids into training programs at Westfield State, and everything went wrong with the timing. And not being on your supervisory goals that year because of that. We do put it in your hands to do this. we know what we're asking you to do. We know that things do arise like COVID and things like that.
So moving on to future agenda items.
Can we put the lessons learned conversation? I ask this every school committee meeting, that why isn't the lesson learned in future agenda items? And they say it's going to be added and then it doesn't get added and then,
Well, wasn't there a question of what we were looking for specifically?
well, Al had said one time he's going to have a conversation with the teachers and come to us with that, and that never happened.
Wait, that did happen, but I'm still learning, right? So all of a sudden, last Friday, everything changed again with the commissioner. So we're still learning. Like, we're back to square one in some situations of what's taking place. So we're not done this yet. So just,
We were also talking about doing a workshop. Like I said, you know, there are things that have passed. When we went all remote, that's over. We can talk about what we did and what we learned from that. Then when we went and we had people who were at the different cohorts and stuff like that, that is over. We can talk about how that went. And then we had last year where we had some kids that were remote and some kids that were here, and that is over. And we can talk about how that went, because now we have all the kids back. And then there might be a time where we have to do or go back to some of those. So I think it's really important that we sit down and look at those 3 things that we've done, find out what did we do right, what should we have done differently, so that if it comes around again, we've already had those conversations. We know what worked and what didn't work, and then we have that as the starting point for if we have to come
So
back.
maybe instead of that being a discussion that we lead, because that is more of something that would happen on the Al level with his administrators, the teams, the building principals, that we can have a public forum on the topic, and you just have to figure out how you want to work that strategically so that you can hear all those things, because ideally what's gonna come from that is what Al's gonna do.
Right.
It's how he's gonna do what he's doing. It's not for us to tell him how we thought he should have done something. It's him basically coming to us and saying, hey, this is what we learned.
Right.
This is what worked, this is what didn't, but
I would love that. That would be
it's
great.
more of a him talking to us, not us telling him.
I never said us telling him. I said, I just want to know what the lessons learned were, because this is, I have a feeling this is coming around again. Hopefully it won't. Who knows, maybe in 5 years, something like this happens again. Hopefully not for another ever again, but you know, if it does, I would like to have lessons learned. This is what we learned. This is what we did right. This is how we could have done it.
and I just wanted to say one other thing, like, we're still in the process, right? This is our first week of school. Patrick called me this week about something. I picked up when I needed to say, so the buses are late. I know that. It's like, no, that's not why I'm calling you. I'm like, there's just so much ever changing still. Like, even if it wasn't dealing with COVID and all that, the first few weeks of school, the first couple of weeks, it's still, we're still working out. Even with all my years and all the years that we have in this group of administrators and teachers, we still gotta work this out. So just know we want to do it the right way. And there's just a lot on our place right now. Opening the school and the closing the school are probably the 2 toughest times a year. And we're gonna get there. We're gonna do it well.
Michelle, 2 agenda items. So one, when we made our mask policy, we committed to reviewing on September 23rd. And I know that the DESI guidance goes, I believe, a day past ours. However, we would meet between when the DESI guidance expires and so forth. So if we can do that. And then the other one is an update on how students who are quarantining are receiving education. Please. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn. Can we just put a strategic plan update on there as well, too, just to give you a little more of what's going on?
Second.
Roll call vote, Bill.
Aye.
Cheryl. Aye. John.
Aye.
Patrick.
Aye.
Lisa. Aye. Maura.
Aye.
Michelle, aye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.